All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the Parks and Recreation Commission regular meeting. It's Wednesday, November 13th at 5:30 p.m. And we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to an order. Ms. Rachel, can you please take roll?
Yes, thank you. Jessica West.
Present.
Gelsomino.
Present.
Keith Bevan is absent. Jennifer Bobo.
Present.
Abby Hutchins is absent. Joe Greer is absent. Michelle Jensen.
Present.
John Nesmith.
Present.
Craig Steele is absent.
Expected.
Is that one expected?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
We don't know that he's not coming.
Okay.
The others we know are not coming.
Yes. All right. Thank you. All right. So our first item is an adoption of the agenda.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Gelsomino.
I move that we adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Madam President, I second.
All right. Can I get a count of who all is in favor?
Aye.
Or any opposed? Motion granted. Next item, approval of the minutes.
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Gelsomino.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October the 9th.
Madam President, I second.
Thank you. Can I get a count who all is in approval?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Or any opposed? Nope. Okay, motion granted. Next, we have announcements. So this is my item. All right, Commissioner reappointments. We were very excited to know that Commissioner Bobo, Commissioner Gelsomino, and our Youth Commissioner, Abby Hutchins, all intend to continue on our commission, volunteering their hours, their experience, and their knowledge to improving our community. So that's wonderful news. We love having you, and we're so grateful you guys are willing to take on 3 years for the commissioners and then 1 year for youth, correct?
Correct. And I was just going to point out that they were approved last night,
Wonderful.
I believe.
I understand that there
They
were
were.
some timing intricacies because of other things going on. They kind of slipped into and it has to be publicly, I presented the opening, so there was a little bit of a snag there in trying to.
Right, so they had to wait while it got
Yes.
noticed that there was an opening, see if there were any other applicants, but I think that they were finalized last night at City Council.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now you guys are really on the hook. 3 more years. Remember that. All right, and the next item is the December elections for our leadership, which is the president and vice president roles. As you know or may not know, I plan to step down as president for next year. I still want to be on the commission, but not in the president role. So our vice president, Commissioner Gelsomino, gets an automatic nomination. If anyone is interested in a leadership role, to be thinking of that, because that is what we'll be doing in December. So, and I'm not sure who may be interested in the vice president roles or anything, but if you would like to be considered, please just make sure that Rachel knows probably in advance, especially if you aren't going to be able to be here for the December meeting, because that will kind of be critical. All right.
And if you have any questions about what that entails, I think you probably know just from seeing the meetings run, but if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us, Rachel or I.
So, all right. On to the next item. We have brainstorm fiscal year 2020 all commission goals in December. Mr. Steve Sidaway, would you like to give us
I would be happy to. So in December, it's our tradition to set the goals for the commission for the coming year. As a reminder, your goals for the current year are on the back page of your agenda. There are 11 of them. 12 of them. There's one that jumps over to the next page. Thank you. There are 12 of them. Encourage you to look those over, just refresh your memory about them between now and then. Think about if there's any that are old that need to come off, if there are any that are new that you'd like to see added, and we will go through a scoring process. In fact, we'd like to come to that meeting with a proposed draft list. It can still be amended at the meeting, but for the sake of efficiency, if you know of something that you'd like to see changed, if you would please reach out to me, we can have that on the draft for discussion by everyone. But we usually meet as staff and come to you with a proposed list based on what we know has changed. But if any of you have something on your mind that you want to know is considered, I guess just reach out to me and we can do that. It can also happen the night of the meeting, but any work we can do ahead of time just makes it more efficient. So we'll come to that with a draft. We will discuss them. We'll ask for changes, additions, deletions. There will be a voting process where each of you individually rank your top, let's say it's 12, 1 to 12, and then we tally up the votes and come to an agreement that as a group, this is the group's top, order of priority goals for the coming year. Any questions about that?
Madam President? So Steve, what date would you like those submitted
I?
to you by in order to support the conversation you're having internally?
That's a great question. Let's see. Let me work backwards. The agenda comes out the week before on probably the 6th. Probably needed a week before that, so probably the end of November.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm excited to hear some new ideas. Are we allowed to email to give everyone a heads up, or no, because we're voting on them?
I think we probably better avoid the group emails,
Okay.
but if you have something
Yeah.
that you'd like me to capture for the group's discussion, we can do it that way. Any other legal advice, Ted? Is that good? That's good. Hey,
All right.
thanks.
Thank you. And now our Miss Shelley Houston.
Hello, commissioners. How are you? I ask you, does the fun ever end? No, it does not. And I hate to give you a handout and stand and read it to you because that's so rude. But let me give you a few highlights on a couple of these items, dates to keep on your radar. We're getting ready to gear up for the holidays. And so very soon we'll position a Salvation Army giving tree out in our lobby, out near the main entrance, as well as the big city Christmas tree, which will be decorated in the lobby. There will be gift tags on that tree, and if you'd like to buy a gift for a child in need, you would take a tag, buy the gift, and return it unwrapped to us here at City Hall, up in Parks and Rec, and we'll be collecting those through December 12th. And then on the 13th, we load up a big old Parks truck and take them to the Salvation Army. So take a look. It's pretty much any type of gift for any child. They don't literally match children to gifts. It's a newfangled way of doing it. Almost any child's gift would be appreciated. We'll also put Santa's mailbox out front. And people, again, this year will put their utility bills inside. No, Santa's not paying your utility bill. But children that do put a letter to Santa inside the mailbox and include a legible return address prior to December 18th will literally receive a nice kind of customized letter in the mail that our little helper elves put together. So that's a fun program. I don't know if you're going to talk about it on the agenda, but we're zhuzhing up the parade float for you if you'd like to ride with any of your family members in the Meridian Winter Lights Parade on Friday, December 6th. Again, this year you can gather at the Meridian Chamber office and go inside and stay warm while everyone's getting together and getting ready. And then you need to be out and to literally board the float prior to the 6:30 parade start. And so any of you are welcome to do that. If you have questions, let me know. I don't know if there's been talk of costuming or if you have a little gig. So anyway, you guys can work that out. There's an interesting coffee with the mayor on Tuesday, December 10th. Interesting because it'll be Mayor Tammy's last one before she heads to greener pastures, but also because it's at that Pivot Lifestyle and Fitness by KA. Anyone know what KA stands for?
Catherine Albertson.
No? Well, yes, but no. Yes, but no, but yes.
Kristen Armstrong.
Kristen Armstrong, our gold medal cyclist who lives here in the Treasure Valley. This is kind of her vision of a fitness center. So it's a pair of side-by-side businesses, or I haven't been out there yet, but there's the address on Vanguard Way. I believe it's out near 10 Mile, but I could be mistaken. Yeah. That's why God invented Google Maps. Okay, the Twilight Christmas Market, again, will be here at City Hall on December 11th. That's a Wednesday from noon to 7. On On December 12th, the following day, it's a Thursday, we'll be celebrating Mayor Tammy with a pair of receptions. Employees will attend from 3 to 4:30, kind of cake and punch. And then we'll tidy up a little, and we've invited the public in from 5:30 to 7:30. We're hoping there might be some light appetizers and no promises on the food and beverage. It's in progress. But anyway, a chance to come and speak to Mayor Tammy, and there might be a few presentations. We'll get you more details as that comes a little closer. We'll again do our Children's Winterland Festival over the Boys and Girls Club gym on the 14th from 10 to 3. And then the new year comes, and it'll be time to say goodbye to 3 councilmen, Ty Palmer, Genesis Milam, and Ann Little Roberts. And we'll say hello to a new mayor, Robert Simison, and to new councilmen, Brad Hoagland, Jessica Peralt, and Liz Strader. So again, more details will come on that, but you're certainly invited. Our new activity guide comes out December 6th. We call it Winter/Spring. It'll be razzly-dazzly, so check it out. Any questions, comments, concerns? Pretty self-explanatory. We'll get a little more details to you on the mayor's goodbye activities and that sort of thing as it comes a little closer.
I do have a question for you, Shelley.
Yes, ma'am.
The parade route last year, they widened where they cut off the roads and earlier. Do we know what those are for Franklin, like we're on the way to where we need to be? Is Franklin to Locust Grove going to be closed again, or are they going to change that?
May I call up Renee White? Can I phone a friend?
Phone a friend.
Renee, pick up the phone. Tell them all about it. Tell them all about it, sister. Do you understand the question?
I didn't hear the entire question. If you could repeat it.
Okay, last year they widened the road closure and they closed it earlier than in previous years so that from Franklin Road all the way to Locust Grove was closed and you couldn't come up that way. In previous years, we were able to park and come up Franklin and park near like the,
Yes,
Is
yes.
that
We have
going to
had
be-
many discussions
yes, I
about
knew you said you were
the-
going to talk about that.
the Franklin Road from Locust Grove all the way up to Stratford, right?
Yes.
And I have asked them to leave it open with the hard closure right there at Stratford, with the idea that you can go
Up
Stratford
Stratford,
and you
okay.
can come around and in from Water Tower into Story Park, through Story Park,
Yep,
and
okay.
into where you meet at the chamber. Probably the easiest and quickest way is up through Meridian, on Meridian Road, and just right into Story Park off of Meridian Road. Because you're right, the Franklin portion of it is closed.
It is going to be closed
And,
again. Okay.
yes.
It's always a challenge, and we understand that. So we ask you to pack your patience.
Did we win?
Leave a little early.
Did we win?
Winner. Leave a little early. And there's also some VIP parking in that Meridian Chamber, the little parking lot there. It would be for you and for the city council members. I don't know how many spaces are in there. You might consider being dropped off. You might think about carpooling with your buddy. Just know that might be one of the least fun parts of the evening, but hopefully the payoff will be good. We've got lots of great parade entries. We just tell them, just make sure your float's visible from space, and we'll be happy. So we'll have circulating satellites just verifying that the floats can be seen from space, but we're confident they will. Anyway, thanks. Does that help you for now?
Yes, thank you.
Call if you have questions or worries.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Rachel Myers.
Yes, thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. So each year, all city commissions prepare a written annual report, which is provided to the mayor and council, which highlights their accomplishments. And so what I can do is I can prepare a draft report that would include all of the commission's accomplishments based on the 12 goals that Steve had mentioned earlier, and get that to you for your review and feedback. And then at the December meeting, you'll take action on that report.
So fun fact, at least this was the way it was last year, the commission president presents that to city council. Is that still the case?
Yes, in the coming year, it'll be a verbal report based off of the written report, so yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're on to our next item. We have Is new business, Ada County Parks and Waterways update for Mr. Scott Coburg, Director. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Familiar face, you were here recently.
Thank you. I was here last month and had some technical difficulties thank you, Madam Chair and Commission, first of all, for inviting me back to provide an update on Ada County Parks and Waterways. Prepared somewhat of an overview of our department as well as an update on the float season. Boise River float season here in November. We're a little bit further afield now, but at Steve's invitation, I'm proud to be here representing Ada County. Since the technical difficulties last time that Rachel helped out with, my wife and daughters have all given me a hard time about needing to be on Google Drive and instead of bringing thumb drive. So I've taken quite a bit of heat from everybody for not having a prepared presentation. I do have 30 minutes that you've so graciously allowed on the agenda. I hope not to take quite so much time, but I do have several slides, and so I'll be moving quickly through those slides to try to keep you on schedule. Despite that, please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions, okay? So again, I mentioned the overview. I'm just going to run through these, and I'll cover these in more detail. So parks, open space, trails, and waterways property management under Ada County Parks and Waterways includes our flagship facility, which is Barber Park. We have grounds, trails, natural resources, facilities, and equipment located there. I will have some more photos and things for each of these items as we proceed. The Barber Park Education and Event Center, if any of you have ever been to a wedding, reception, fundraiser, any of those events, those are all under our department's direction. We do also manage several segments and portions of the Boise River Greenbelt. Most folks hear about the 25 miles of Greenbelt that's within Boise city limits. There's truly about 42 miles of Greenbelt pathway and trail along the Boise River. That includes Ada County, unincorporated Ada County, Garden City, Eagle, and then Boise City. The Foundation for Parks and Lands also opens a small segment on Plantation Island. Lucky Peak Lake docks and ramps. The Victory Stormwater Basin and constructed wetlands, Hubbard Reservoir Recreation Area, Ada Eagle Bike Park and Public Recreation Area, Oregon Trail Recreation Area. I also represent the county in the Rich Rivers Trail System Partnership. We're responsible for management of over 200 miles of trails in the foothills. We are not the lead coordinating partner, that is the city of Boise, but I do represent the county on that partnership. And then the Boise River float season. So I breezed through those. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on each of these, and then I'll focus on that float season towards the end. So this is sort of where those properties and open space facilities and trails are spread out throughout the county. We'll start here with number 4, which is that Barber Park, our flagship park facility and our department headquarters. So there at Barber Park, if we take a closer look at the map, most folks that visit Barber Park know it for float season and launching on the Boise River, which really only exposes you to this front end of the park if you kind of can follow that cursor, and maybe some of the parking areas. In fact, Barber Park is about 70 acres of park property, including a lot of natural habitat area and the largest contiguous black cottonwood forest in the valley, which also helps to provide attenuation for flood flows when the Boise River does reach its peak, and it will actually run into the forest, dissipate those flows before going downstream into those neighborhoods. So it serves some flood capacity. And then we also have the typical amenities that you find in a lot of neighborhood parks. There is a basketball court, playground, and those types of things. Here in the front of the park is our park headquarters administration facility. It also is adjoined to the Raft and Tube rental facility. We have the event center listed as number 4 there. Number 5 is our maintenance shop where all of our vehicles and equipment are located for our entire department, aside from one small storage unit at the bike park. And then we also have segments of Boise River Greenbelt Pathway and Greenbelt Trail, pathway being asphalt or concrete and trail being more primitive native surface closer to the river. So the official Greenbelt does run right through Barber Park. We got a little bit of everything going on there. So we've had active management the county has since the 1970s. I mentioned 68 acres, just about 70 acres of park property. There is seasonality in terms of visitation related to the float season. And then that picture on the bottom is our admin building facility on the left. You see our admin office space there, and on the right is the rental facility. You'll notice this is a LEED certified silver building. There is solar tubes on the southern portion of the building on the left-hand side, that feeds energy back to the grid. We like to say that we help inflate the tubes and rafts and everything with sunlight, because that's really what it's powering, is the compressors as well. And then on the right-hand side there, we do have a green roof over that facility to reduce expenses for cooling that building, and also reduce the footprint, carbon footprint on the building. I heard in the last meeting you've also undertaken some striping and seal coating, not very sexy projects, but definitely needed projects at any park facility that has a lot of parking. We've also done something similar in the last couple of years here. And then just to kind of give you that summary of what visitation in the park sort of looks like, and again, the parking, the river floating amenities, and everything associated with that we manage. People management is huge. The flow of people and vehicles through the park, primarily in the summer, is just really a challenge, and one of our largest challenges this year. So we'll talk a little bit more about that during the float season. Some of these photos you'll see here, that upper left photo is kind of a typical waiting area for rental equipment, and the bottom is basically any summer weekend afternoon in Barber Park. There are folks lined up about 20 deep at our complimentary compressor stations. We have 24 hoses, and on the busiest of days, which is pretty much every summer day now, there'll be a line of 20 deep to fill up their own equipment at those compressor stations. So I'm sure you're seeing that in Meridian. There's just a tremendous increase in population, and throughout the valley, we're just seeing visitation increase through the roof. Jumping right into the event center, the education and event center located just behind our office building. You could see it in that picture in kind of the background that I showed earlier of our office. As I mentioned, we serve all kinds of different community events, very forward-facing like any park would be. But as an event center, I'd say the majority, probably about 80% of our events now tend to be weddings and receptions. That wasn't really the original intent, but it happens to be what folks rent the facility for. We do a lot of student-based events. We've done proms and things like that. We've done big birthday parties, a lot of fundraisers and those types of events, and agency meetings and training. But just about anything we'll host at the event center. We do staff all of those with our own staff. The one vendor contract we do have that's an exclusive contract is for the alcohol. And the alcohol for events is actually provided by a Meridian business here down the road. It's the Curb Bar and Grill. They've been the alcohol provider and they have a catering service for about the past 6 years now. This will be the 6th year of them serving as the exclusive alcohol provider. A couple of nice photos of the event center on the exterior. And just to give you some background on what this facility does generate in terms of revenue for 80 County Parks and Waterways, we did host 128 event days last fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends at the end of September. The event bookings, we provide a very good value, I think, in the market. That's why a lot of people do rent. It's a county facility, it's a government facility, so the price point is cheaper. But our event bookings generated almost $112,000 in revenue. And then the alcohol sales, we do a revenue share with that exclusive vendor, and our share was about $16,500 there. Okay, moving on outside the park, the Greenbelt, just to cover a couple of Greenbelt items. Boise River Greenbelt, we've had active management since the 80s. We currently have about 11 miles of owned, managed, or licensed Greenbelt. And we completed 2 major capital projects within the fiscal years of 17 and 18. One was called the Warm Springs Mesa, and one that might be of more interest to this commission is the Penitentiary Canal. I know there's a lot of discussion about the potential of pathways parallel to canals in Meridian and other areas throughout the valley. That happens to be one that we've had an agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation and the Boise Project Board of Control that dates back a couple of decades. And what we recently undertook was a project to pipe the canal in order to get the proper width for the type of traffic we see on that project. So we now have a wider, safer, smoother pathway. By eliminating the canal, you do eliminate some habitat, but it's right there next to the Boise River as well. And so we do have this awesome riparian corridor and a better way for people to enjoy it. I kind of emphasize that, I believe, on this next slide. So what you see is before a pretty deplorable condition of the pathway. This was sort of what I inherited when I started about 6 years ago in my position. Our pathways that were failing and dilapidated and had run their life and then some. You can see the open canal primarily on the upper right-hand photo, just next to the pathway here. And when we piped that canal and then widened the pathway approximately 2.5 feet, we just created this probably, what we received feedback that it's the best stretch of greenbelt that's out there now. And this was about 1.25 mile project. So we're pretty proud of that. Pride is one thing. We've also received a couple of awards for both of these projects. One was the ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies, first place engineering award. And here just down the road where Compass is located, we did get the Leadership in Motion Award for Leadership in Government for those projects last year. Matt Stoll, who is the executive director, again, kind of relates to what may be happening here in Meridian in terms of if there is an interest in doing that type of project along a canal. His words from the letter of award indicates that this project exemplifies leadership in government, and just to cut to the chase, basically by incorporating a lot of other different agencies and parties into this kind of complicated greenbelt improvement project. So we're moving right on to the next one here, Lucky Peak Lake. Now this one surprises a lot of people, and I mentioned it last month as well. Lucky Peak Lake, you wouldn't maybe assume that Ada County has any involvement at the lake, but we are in fact very involved at Lucky Peak Lake. Army Corps of Engineers manages anything above the water line essentially. Boise, and they do maintain the pool levels. Idaho State Departments of Parks and Recreation's primary facilities there at Spring Shores Marina, but all of the docks throughout the lake and even at the ramp sites and launch sites, those are all Ada County Waterways docks. And so we have over 100 dock strings at 16 recreation sites covering 3 counties, not just Ada County, but also Boise and Elmore counties up at Lucky Peak Lake. On any given summer day, every single one of those docks is occupied by families on either side that have, or have already attached their boats to the cleats and are, hanging out on the docks or swimming or having a picnic, that kind of thing. I mentioned it's 100 dock strings at 16 recreation sites and 4 ramp sites, Barclay Bay, Turner Gulch, Max Creek, and Roby Creek Park throughout the lake. Our Waterways Division, the way it's funded, and I think I mentioned this last time, but we do receive boater registration fees for motorized boats. It's part of the state statute that allows any kind of Ada County Waterways Improvement Fund to receive those boater registration fees in order to reinvest them for recreation and safety type facilities. Lucky Peak happens to be our primary recreation facility for motorized recreation. The Snake River also is another area where we're looking at potential investments, but so far it's been almost all at Lucky Peak, including that lower left-hand corner where we do contribute a portion of what we receive to the Ada County Sheriff Marine Patrol for patrol up at the lake. This upper left photo we'll kind of focus on a little bit here. I mentioned the sailing program, and I saw in your minutes and remember from our last meeting here that there was some interest in learning a little bit more about the recent receipt of some grants. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but we'll talk a little bit about that. We received about I think it's $20,000 in grant funds from state parks to invest in these low-profile docks to start a youth sailing program up at Lucky Peak Lake, which was just launched through Boise Community Education. So I'll visit on that in a couple slides. This is one of those times where it's really great, this slide here, when we don't have to kind of beat our own chest and say, here's what we're doing for the community. Somebody else does it for us. So in this case, our Army Corps of Engineer partners actually submitted this Facebook post. This is from a few years ago now, but it basically spells out, did you know that every single dock except those at the Spring Shores Marina is maintained and provided by Ada County Parks and Waterways? Over 500 dock segments. So there's 100 dock strings segment. There's various segments per string on the lake, and we have 2 people doing that on an annual basis. And then he goes on to describe, how we do this. And at the bottom, these are one of those things. I mean, we're happy to partner with, the city of Meridian, other cities, federal, state, local. I'm a real big believer in collaboration to, leverage everybody's abilities to get things done. And this is one of those ways where we leverage as much as we can to get things done for the public up at Lucky Peak. This slide here reflects the new low-profile docks that are now installed at Spring Shores Marina, the whole purpose of which is to get and it's $135,000, I misspoke, that was awarded to our department in order to get these kids on the water learning to sail. And there's a short video clip that I'll show you, and this is one of those cases where we're not mentioned in it. State Parks isn't mentioned in it, although we're two big partners. Boise City Parks kind of conducted this interview, but you'll get a gist for how happy these kids are to be learning this new skill and how valuable it is, I think, for the community to have this resource.
Treasure Valley kids have been spending their summer days at the Spring Shores Marina learning how to sail. It's a new partnership between the city of Boise and the Southern Idaho Sailing Association, encouraging kids to get out on the water.
It's about
6 on
2
your side,
minutes.
Steve Dunn shows us what these kids learned sailing around Arrow Rock Reservoir.
We could have here at Spring Shores Marina the next Kristen Armstrong of sailing.
The Boise Parks and Rec Department put 2 different camps together to teach kids the sport of Olympic sailing.
It's just a week-long camp, but the curriculum has them in the water, overturning boats, steering it within the first day. And by the end of the week, they're able to navigate these boats behind us. I am blown away by how fast they've been able to pick up the sport of sailing.
The best example of that is Elise Messerly, as she came a long way during the camp.
I was very nervous at the beginning, but I'm glad I kind of got better.
The Southern Idaho Sailing Association provided the sailboats for this camp and taught the children about science, more specifically, how to use the wind to their advantage on the water.
We learned the knots that we needed to get the boats ready to go. We learned how to get out in the water. We learned how to dock. Once we're on the water, we learned sail positions to catch the wind correctly so we can go as fast as possible, which is what we all want to do.
The kids also learned how to self-rescue while stepping out of their comfort zone thanks to an opportunity the city of Boise is proud to be a part of.
The #1 rule to any successful program is that kids have to have fun. And we're getting thumbs up all from the parents, from the kids, from the instructors. This camp is hands down one of the funnest programs that we've been able to offer this summer.
The first ever sailing camp definitely made a big splash.
When the wind picks up and you start
So there they
moving,
were
that's
jumping off
the
our new
best feeling
docks.
ever.
And again, I mentioned that Boise City kind of took the lead on the outreach on that, but we're fine with it. It's great to see kids out there getting, this kind of opportunity. So another area in which we've been very passionate is Lucky Peak Lake. Move on here and cover 5 Mile Victory Wetland, also known as the Victory Stormwater Basin and Constructed Wetlands, kind of a mouthful. This is a small little pocket park, about 3 acres of open space, kind of has a long storied history if anybody is interested another time. But we've had active management from Ada County Parks and Waterways since 1997. It's a partnership with the Ada County Highway District. It includes a stormwater basin and constructed wetlands with a lot of educational kiosks and information regarding wildlife habitat, stormwater retention, water quality, our watersheds, and those types of things. It's a really cool little park opportunity. The new signs that you see there on the left-hand side, we just installed this last year. This was another park that was kind of becoming dilapidated, and we made some improvements. And we've also recently welcomed kind of a new partnership at the park. The upper right-hand portion represents the local, actually it's the regional library branch located at Victory and 5 Mile, just a short walk down the road. They're now bringing students in for a story walk. I think you're probably familiar with story walks where you kind of print a couple pages of a book and spread that book out throughout an area. Well, we have about 12 different pages then of this cool book. It's called Down by the Cool of the Pool. And the idea is to get kids out exercising, getting fresh air, while also reading. And so they're taking these kids out that visit the library on kind of a weekly basis to go visit the wetlands and read the book. The owl mascot there is called Houdini, so there's Houdini. But these kids had a great time. Again, down near Cuna, south of Meridian here, we do have a recreation area that most people have never heard of, never visited. It's called a Hubbard Reservoir Recreation Area. We've had a lease with the Department of Land since 2003 to manage this property. It includes 377 acres of open space. It's a huge facility, and it's primarily what you see in the upper left and lower left. You know, it's wide open spaces with some wetland area. It was a reservoir that was commissioned by a private individual in the early 1900s, and it never held water. And so it has the ability to also accept overflow from the New York Canal in the case of an emergency, but typically it's kind of just a big kind of wet pool, but doesn't take up nearly that amount of acreage. And so you do have some cool waterfowl and bird watching kind of opportunities out there. There's some interesting wildlife habitat. Primary users now are equestrian users, folks with dogs, and like I mentioned, bird watchers and people taking pictures of birds. We're interested, we put a new vault toilet in there, you see on the bottom left, in 2014. We are interested in increasing visitation of this site. It's kind of an unpolished gem. It really needs a little bit of improvement on the trails and just kind of a little bit more outreach as far as what we've got out there. But it's kind of a cool spot. Ada Eagle Bike Park. This map just shows you if you have kids that use the bike park, or if you've learned to ride, or have kids in BMX. The bike park is just laced with trails. The way this started, I won't get into the big backstory, but it was landfill buffer property from the Ada County landfill. It's over off of North Horseshoe Bend Road in Floating Feather. It is probably our second highest visited facility if you don't count the Greenbelt. It's a tremendously popular park. Bike parks are kind of the big thing and have been for a few years now. A lot of communities building bike parks, and it draws users from all different ages and abilities. We jointly manage it with the City of Eagle now. The city has most of that infrastructure towards the front end that they purchased from the county a couple years ago now, and we manage most of the cross-country trails. If you're interested, there's also our Ada County IT department put together this interactive map using the drone imagery that they created. We've got a fixed wing drone and a quadricopter drone in our IT department now, and so they look for opportunities to fly and create cool new maps. I'm not on an interactive version of this, but you can zoom in and, I mean, really get tremendous detail on this map and spin it around and kind of plan out rides and things. At this bike park, it's not your typical types of trails. There are typical trails there, your regular foothills cross-country trails, but it's the one location currently until Boise City just completed a bike park or is completing that bike park down near Fort Street in East Boise. It's the only bike park that has, or trails facility, I should say, that has man-made features integrated into the hillside. I mean, there's punch-ins, there's this big flyover bridge, there's what's called cannon drops, which are, drops to midair over the top of other trails. And so you have really high-end users, and then you have these little pump tracks for kids that are just on little bikes that you just kind of push and go, that are separated from these more expert type areas. So any weekend day, if you haven't been out there, you head out there and you'll just see endless smiles and people of all abilities, full face helmets and shin guards next to a kid with, ribbons off their handlebars. So it's a really cool sight. We also have the Oregon Trail Recreation Area. This has been in the county's management portfolio since 2010. It includes ownership of 25 acres at the trailhead. Up on the upper left is what you see as the trailhead. It's an interpretive kiosk, kind of, meant to mimic the wagons of the Oregon Trail. And then we have 14 acres that we own to the south of that as well. Lots of open space and recreation, and there's also cultural and historic preservation opportunities. We do tie into BLM property, and we have had the National Park Service provide us with new signage we'll be installing this year to kind of showcase the trail as the Oregon Trail did pass through this property, as well as what's called the Kelton, not the ramp, but it's the Kelton Road, but it also has another name, Cargo Road or something along those lines. Anyway, they carried a lot of materials and supplies off of the canyon in this location, down to the Boise River. And that site was nominated and did receive the 2018 County Treasure Award. And I'll try to wrap up here quickly. Ridge to Rivers, I mentioned that site on the map was one of our trailhead facilities, but for those of you that aren't familiar, Ridge to Rivers actually consists of 5 different partner agencies. And the city of Boise is what's considered the lead coordinating partner per the MOU that we have. Those are the other partners listed there, 200 miles of trails in the foothills. And most recently, one of the county's contributions was a Red Hawk property that we own near Hidden Springs. We built a new trail called Landslide Loop on that property just last May, one of the newer additions to the system. Covered all those. Now we'll focus real quick on the float season, and then I'll be done. So I mentioned the float season. Every year we put out a floater guide. This is kind of our big bread and butter thing. This is sort of what we're known for. Most people think we don't do anything else. That's kind of why I cover all those other things we do, and then it's like, well, this is the one thing we're kind of known for. So this was the part of the guide from 2019, a little frequently asked questions portion. And then what is the floatable segment? We consider it the novice floater segment of the Boise River, which consists of 64 miles from Lucky Peak to the Snake River. Well, the novice floater stretch is 6 miles within that 64 miles. The 6 miles from Barber Park to Ann Morrison Park is managed totally differently than the entire rest of the river system. It's managed for a lot of different factors, but novice floater recreation is integrated into that. If you put in and try to launch downstream somewhere else, there's likely to be big hazards and things in the river. In this area, we try to mitigate those hazards. That doesn't happen in other areas of the river. We also provide information on the hours of operation and the rental prices in that floater guide. So, this last year was historic for a lot of reasons. We collect revenue through a couple of different sources. We charge for parking in the summer, and we do equipment rental and shuttle. Equipment rental and shuttle is under a contractor, which we have a revenue share for the revenue generated from that. The parking is direct revenue to our department. So we're taking financial support that we get from the general fund, so tax support, but then we leverage it by bringing in people from all over the country that are, paying a fee for service, and then we inject that back locally to make improvements in the park or trails or pathways. In 2019, we opened on July 2nd, a little bit later than normal. We closed on September 2nd. We only had 59 operational days in the season. We close for 4 days when school starts at the end of August. Average river flow, 840 cubic feet per second, and there's your daily average high. We have a big social media presence. I take a crew out and we collect trash and deflated tubes and rafts about once every 7 to 10 days throughout the course of the summer, because that's part of the experience that we want people to enjoy. And Boise is not a trashed riverbank, and people just leave deflated tubes, rafts, beer cans, anything, you name it, we found it. We did have a news media follow us on one of those trash pickups one day. But we do have a tremendous, just kind of breeze through those, a lot of reach and page likes through our Float the Boise River Facebook page. The inventory that we have 4 shuttle buses that the county owns. R&T stands for Raft and Tube. That's the name of the contractor, Boise River Raft and Tube. It's a shared equipment operation, the way it's currently set up. So this is how it's divvied up. And this will kind of summarize just how much revenue that generates. So the equipment and shuttle contract, the gross revenue in 2019 was $843,193. The daily gross was up 25% over 2018. Part of that had to do with the price increase, but the price increase was only about 10%. The revenue share the county takes of that was just over 200,000. We anticipated 130,000. Give you an idea of how many pieces of equipment that amounts to in a day or a total. We rented over 5,000 four-person rafts throughout the season, and the most in any day was 181 four-person rafts doing laps on the river. September 1st to be the most ever. That never happens. We never close so strong, so that's kind of unusual that we had such a big closing. For the six-person raft rentals, we were closer to 4,000. The most in a day is 145. Most ever were those 2 dates they shared. In the kayak rentals, again, most ever, all these are the most in history for every piece of equipment except for the tubes. Because we added some rafts to the inventory and we reduced the amount of people that are going out in tubes, they prefer to be with somebody else or with a friend or family or that kind of thing. So huge numbers. The bar chart kind of tells the story that this is the new normal. I think this is the new normal for recreation in the valley, for population in the valley. I mean, you see these charts throughout the valley and in the city of Meridian and everywhere else. We're off the charts for gross revenue. I remember in 2015, we were pushing for 500,000 gross revenue, thinking, yeah, that's going to be huge when we hit 500,000. Wow, won't that be a banner year? And it was at the time to hit 500,000, and we went well beyond 500,000. We came towards 6. 2016 kind of leveled off, but still over 5. Yeah, we're still doing it. 2017 was the flood year. That's why that number is so low. We didn't open but for 39 days total. And then if we get a regular, every run-of-the-mill kind of summer in the valley with typical river flows, this is, I think, what we're going to be seeing, which is just an indication of the people, the population. And just to cover the parking, we did see a decrease in parking gross revenue based on the shorter number of days in the season. We had 14 fewer operational days. We did park over 25,000 vehicles. Somebody asked the question at the last meeting, and I think I misspoke there too. We do about 402 daily average for Monday through Sunday, but the most vehicles parked in a day would have been Saturday, July 13th. We parked nearly 1,000 cars. In a lot that has 177 designated stalls and maybe close to 300 and something, we level it off at 500, we estimate. Parking 1,000 cars is a lot of cars to park. Most vehicles parked in an hour, same day. And then the shuttle revenue. About 43,600 people rode the shuttle. Most ever was about 1,700 on that July 13th. And parking looks similar to the shuttle rental and equipment rental, sorry. So, to summarize, this is just the end of the float season, and that's the end of my presentation here, but what will 2020 look like? We have to adapt to the new normal, the high volume of visitors. We do have a capital improvement project to improve the movement of people and flow in Barber Park. I don't know that we're going to be able to implement and construct a lot of it this year before the float season, but we have an RFQ out right now for a landscape architect to help improve the pathways and the parking situation we're currently dealing with. We're always looking at what we can do better and trying to determine where funding should be allocated because we got to be prepared. With that, I'll stand for any questions, but I do appreciate the time and sorry I took my full 30 minutes. I hoped I wouldn't, so.
Madam President.
Mr. Gelsomino?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Coburg, you touched on a bit of what I was going to ask in that little last section there for 2020. I just have 2 quick questions. One question for Barber Park and one question for Lucky Peak. For Barber Park, as we continue to see the growth that we are seeing in Ada County, the lines are just going to keep getting longer and longer. And in my experience, having been someone who goes to float the river, I haven't gone this year, but who usually has gone in the last 10 years I've lived in Idaho pretty frequently. Has there been conversation, or could there be conversation as far as switching from the paper liability waivers to either kiosks with digital waivers? And then secondly, if that is not cost efficient or is less budget friendly than the paper waivers, would those 2020 projects include a potential shade structure for the lines when it becomes excessively hot? Secondly, when it comes to floating the river, the low-hanging foliage, and I know we're talking about miniature ecosystems that have to do with our, environment and whatever creatures live in those low-hanging areas, but we have some spots going down that 2-hour float where you're caught in a situation where the tube might pop because or people get stuck in those branches down there. Who's in charge of the maintenance for that, and are there regulations that are preventing the, cleanup or, trimming of those areas where people could either get caught, hit by branches because they're not paying attention, and, granted, we can't have a sign that says, please pay attention to every detail of the border lines. And, sometimes people can't control it. The currents take you in that direction and you're stuck. So that's my Barber Park questions. My Lucky Pete question, and I don't know if really Ada County has any power over this, but whenever I've gone boating with friends out on the lake, I noticed that whether I was with Sprint or now with T-Mobile, I have no cell coverage on that lake. And it's not because I want to be on my phone while I'm on the lake. Believe me, I use it to unplug. But in the event of an emergency, you're out in the middle of the lake, what plans are there for the future, near future or foreseeable future, of plans to work with cell coverage providers to get better cell coverage on that lake?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, thanks for those questions. I'll start with Barber Park and I'll be brief. So yes, the liability release forms are being put into a digital format, and I believe that will be ready to roll this next upcoming float season. As far as the shade structures are concerned, if you didn't visit this last year, what we did is we incorporate a line management strategy, typically what you see at an airport, where we kind of snake the line, which helps to integrate the shade we currently have, trees planted near that shade structure by the rental facility. It did a tremendous job to reduce the folks standing out a little bit further. We do intend to do some more shading over near the snack shack and the beach area in the future, but we don't foresee that being a huge problem with the line management system we integrated. And Barber Park, in terms of the ecosystem that you mentioned and what we call overhanging debris or serious and obvious hazards. So we put together a river debris team every year prior to the float season. It includes several partners, but the two partners you're primarily referring to would be Idaho Department of Fish and Game and the Boise Fire Department. We bring those folks together, and what we're doing is implementing actions from the Boise River Resource Management Plan that tries to balance habitat on primarily for the awesome cold water trout fisheries we have on the Boise River with the recreation you see on the river. And so that the overhanging limbs and debris is the responsibility of Boise Fire and Boise Forestry. In the course of those floats that we pick up debris, it's also to identify new hazards. Sometimes trees blow over or fall in the river, and we're identifying those consistently, and I'll photo them, send them to those two folks that are responsible on Boise Fire and Boise Forestry, and ask for mitigation, ask for more review, and see if they can be mitigated. So we're always doing that. There's consistently cutting on a weekly basis throughout the season. This last year, you may have seen in the news, Boise Fire had trouble with their boat before the season even started. Their boat got caught up under the bridge pier at Broadway, and it was not serviceable for the entire season. Their new boat wasn't ready until the season was done. So any mitigation that needed to be done had to be done from a raft or had to be done from the shore. So anyway, we're consistently looking and balancing that, but you're exactly right. There are areas that remain, potential hazards if folks aren't paying attention. hopefully that answers Barber Park. In terms of Lucky Peak, yes, Army Corps of Engineers is actually looking at that very issue regarding cell phone service, specifically in the case of emergencies. And I believe it's scheduled to be whatever they're doing, whatever that entails. I don't know the details, but I believe it's going to be rolled out this next year to where on the lake you should expect to receive coverage in most of the areas that you currently don't. So does that answer your questions?
Madam President?
Yes.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Mr. Coburg.
Sure.
Do you have any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, I have one question. You said we're floating on only 6 miles. So is there plans to have another float section someday or ever potentially to be?
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's an interesting question. There isn't currently. There is a dam right below the takeout at Ann Morrison Park. It's called the Lowhead Dam. And then just below that, you have the phases of the Whitewater Park that Boise City has implemented in the last, phase 2 was just implemented this last year. So there is kind of a little float area in there. If you haven't been down there, you can stand up paddleboard, you can surf, you can kayak. They did integrate a little channel that allows for some floating. There's no way to kind of get back and shuttle back. You know, you end up in the lake at Veterans Pond there. But there's ongoing discussions about maybe what that could look like, a longer stretch or different segments of floating, but nothing has been fleshed out. The partners involved in river recreation have been talking about it, though.
Okay. And my other question is motorized ATVs on all these different parks and pathways. I didn't, they were bike parks and things like that. They're not for motorized, correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. Primarily, what we manage for is non-motorized multi-use recreation. Motorized, though, now includes, e-bikes have been designated non-motorized by a lot of agencies, including Ada County for Class 1 e-bikes. The Department of Interior also did just direct the BLM to consider e-bikes non-motorized, Class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes. So ATVs are a whole different story, but we primarily manage for non-motorized public multi-use.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks so much for all this information and your detailed presentation. We appreciate a lot of great information, and it's really nice to see what you guys have been working on.
Thanks. That's why you only have me once a year or less, because it's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the citywide master mobility map. Mr. Caleb Hood, is he present?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I am present. Sorry, just logging into the system here. Give me just 1 second. All right. So my name is Caleb Hood. I am the Planning Division Manager here in Community Development. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Master Mobility Map, and hopefully it's clear here throughout my presentation why this update is being given to you all. Part of my responsibilities here with the city is also to facilitate the Transportation Commission, so sort of your counterpart, if you will, on the planning side of things, dealing with transportation for the city. They meet monthly, and this is one of the things under their charge, but there's a lot of overlap in some of the things you're doing. In fact, Mike and Kim have spoken before at the Transportation Commission, speaking about the Rails with Trails as a transportation mode, some of the pathway projects you have. So there's a lot of overlap, so this is an opportunity to kind of share some things that the Transportation Commission's working on and us in planning are working on, and maybe learn some things that you're interested in as well. So I think I'm just going to jump into the presentation. So a master mobility map, what is it? It's interactive, so I'll show you. I don't have a drone that I flew to make this map like the last presenter, although he didn't go interactive with his. It's not quite that high tech, but it is pretty cool, and I'll do a little demo here for you in a minute. It's multimodal, so it covers whether you're walking, biking, hiking, riding a bus. It shows you basically how you can get around our community or where there's gaps in the system. It is multi-jurisdictional. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. I don't want to talk down to you, but I just want to make sure we have the same understanding here with some of the other agencies, understanding that the city doesn't control its own destiny when it comes to most of the transportation options that are available out there. We rely on others to provide a lot of the infrastructure necessary to get around our community. So we do use called GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, ArcGIS Online. Again, I'll demo that in a minute. So you can turn on different layers and zoom in and out and different parts of the city to see what's available on the streets. If there's sidewalks, again, pathways, bus routes, the various modes that you can get around. And then again, it takes all those transportation agency plans and land uses and puts it into one place. So really the genesis for this was, I don't know how many of you knew or know David Zaremba, but he was a councilman here for several years and worked in other capacities. He was actually also on, at that time, it was called traffic safety, but volunteered for the city for several years as well. And one of the things he kind of left as a challenge was to develop a tool that basically didn't just look 20 or 25 years into the future, but looked 50 to 100 years into the future. The 20 years comes and goes so quickly. Having a good plan in place for what the next couple of decades look like, so that you can have that vision that you won't get there until that point, but again, a longer term goal that you can reach for was really something that he instilled, and again, the Transportation Commission has really latched on to and said, let's do it. And so they're really just starting to get into this, because this is part of developing the city's new comprehensive plan. So I don't know how much of that you've heard, but over the past couple of years, my office has been taking the lead in developing a new long-range plan for the city. If we have some time and you're interested, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we're coming to the finishing line with that and made it through the Planning and Zoning Commission. And next Tuesday, the City Council is scheduled to have that hearing on the comprehensive plan. So this is a tool within the development of the comprehensive plan that really helps the city understand, when approving new projects even, what infrastructure is in place. Is it a 2-lane roadway? Is it a 5-lane roadway? Is it planned to be a 5-lane roadway? Is that 5 lanes still 10 or 15 or 20 years out? Do we really want to approve a 300-lot subdivision when ACHD is not planning to widen the roadway and there's no schools planned for the next 10 years or whatever? So really it helps. It's really meant to, one of the purposes of this is to help us make better decisions as a city onto where our community and how our community grows over time as well. But largely what it is it takes those plans from those various transportation agencies and integrates them all into one database, because they all have their different websites, and you can't, you can pick up the bus, but you know if you can get on a sidewalk to get to that bus. So this tries to merge all that and make it user friendly too. So if you're just in the comfort of your own home, want to check it out and see, where's my nearest bus stop? We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this, but again, I just wanted to make sure we all are on the same foundation when it comes to transportation in Ada County in particular, with ACHD being the only countywide single-use transportation district in the nation. It is a little bit of an anomaly nationwide, but they are responsible they own and maintain all of the public roadways within the county, except for the state highways and the interstate system. So, and which we do have 4 of those as well. And those then are under the jurisdiction of ITD, obviously. Valley Regional Transit does the plans and coordinates transit service. The service provider for buses is actually Valley Ride, and their office is Valley Regional Transit. Valley Ride are just downtown Meridian here. And then Compass is also in that building, so the Compass VRT building here downtown. And they are regional MPO, so when a region gets of a certain size, the federal government requires you to set up an MPO, and Compass is our designated metropolitan planning organization who's charged with maintaining a regional long-range transportation plan. They're multi-county, so Canyon County is also part of that, and other agencies, highway districts and whatnot. I just put in there LTAC, which is the Local Highway Technical Assistance Council. Mostly what that group is they will offer technical assistance to transportation agencies and others that need it, whether it be with grants or project management, those types of things to get projects up off the ground and running. But they're another kind of partner agency, if you will. And then I put parks on there again. The pathway network is vital, and a little bit more on that as I progress through this presentation. So there's a screenshot. A lot of this I already covered in that first slide, but it basically is the.
I don't think our screens are changing to what you think they're changing. Like I'm hearing
Sorry.
you mention different things, but we're not seeing them, but.
I had it pulled up over here on the left
Okay.
screen, and then I switched and logged in. Sorry, I'm just talking
Thank
to
you.
myself here. I'm just going to close this. Yes, and feel free to interrupt too with other questions or concerns or flubs that I may make. Okay, so there's the master mobility map again, screenshot of that. It highlights transportation infrastructure and the projects across agencies and MOs. It is not currently housed on the city server. We actually had consultant help. Kittleson and Associates helped us develop this. There's a couple of bugs we're still working out, but once we work those out, we will roll them on the city servers. So again, you have a handheld device or whatever. Don't do it while you're driving, but you can search for things like this and pull them up and understand infrastructure, what infrastructure exists and what's planned. And I also touched on it's not part of the comp plan. Essentially, it's I don't want to say it's Google Maps on steroids, but it's real similar to that, right? You can do trip planning that way. It won't tell you when the bus is going to come necessarily, but you can see if a bus is going by. Send you a link to go to Valley Ride's website and get the. So let's go there real quick, hopefully. So when you go to that link, this is what will pop up. Everyone can see that, yeah? Okay. So there's a couple of different menus. This is the main menu. This is a legend layer here, so if you don't know what things mean, this will tell you, what does an orange line mean. You can turn on the different layers. I'll just turn them all off for now. So if you want to look at, we'll just look at transit routes, for instance. It'll show you all the transit routes. And again, for those of you that, how closely you track this, but Valley Regional Transit has put together a transit plan for the future called Valley Connect 2.0. And they got different scenarios in that. So depending on funding sources and over time, you can kind of see how that system would grow. So there's the stops. I'll turn that off. This is the ultimate build out then of that long range plan. And then the intermediate. There's no real time horizon on these, but they would build up from today to the intermediate to an ultimate. And this isn't the ultimate build out transportation network or transit network. It shows you essentially what that could look like. You can click on it. It'll tell you the route name, where it's going to and from. And there's hyperlinks as well to a lot of this information that'll send you to some of those. I'll show you pathways as well. Should probably turn those off first. So it shows real similar. This is essentially our GIS system that we have and maintain in the city, but it shows existing planned pathways as well. So again, you can look at that into the future. ACHD, again, they have, I'm going to jump back up to roads, turn these off. These also expand a lot of times too, so if you're not sure what a color means, it'll tell you, this is a minor arterial roadway. Intersections, roundabouts, whatnot. Again, you get the idea. So again, the idea would be if a new project is proposed out here, what amenities are nearby, what transportation infrastructure is existing today or planned for the next several years. So again, it's not fully finished, but it is pretty close. We'll send out links when it's fully up and running. And again, right now you need to log in to view this information, but we plan on making it available to the public here in the very near future. So I mentioned that the comprehensive plan is up for adoption here next Tuesday before the city council. One of the things that we heard quite a bit as we were asking the public for their impact on what do you envision for your city in the coming decades, and it may have just been because we're in a lot of activities and events in parks. But we heard pathways was one of the top things that we heard people, and this probably isn't any surprise to you all, but it surprised me a little bit. The pathways, having a robust pathway network was very important to a lot of people. And so I'm not going to say it was the most important because the rate of growth and traffic concerns and overcrowded schools were probably at the top. But one of the things they'd like to see kind of after those things were, again, what pathways and parks were very important to people. So it's something that we're going to be working on as staff to try to implement some of the policies and directives we heard from the community to build the city that they want to live in the coming decades and work in and play in. And again, kind of another similar theme going along with overcrowded schools and roadway infrastructure that isn't keeping up with the traffic is that coordination with transportation agencies. So this tool we think we can use to develop something, like I said, a longer range plan than when ACHD is ready to plan for their next 5 years, because they just built the last 5 years. We can say, here's the projects in Meridian we'd like you to do, rather than them coming up with their own list. We can be proactive in that and feed that to them. Same with the bus service. Hey, this is where we've got the density and where we're planning on people to live and work. Maybe that's where it makes sense to run the buses or make those pathway connections because there's subdivisions and schools that we want to connect to. So this tool we think can help us serve a lot of different policies actually that are coming out of this new plan to, again, better communicate and coordinate with other transportation agencies, because transportation is a big deal right now. I mentioned development review too. Again, we would use that as part of that process. And then I think the last thing, and this is a little bit of an offshoot, but one of the things in the comprehensive plan that we're going to really look to evaluate even more further is this thought of designated growth areas. So instead of having growth happen everywhere, kind of simultaneously and almost randomly, chaotically, is to designate areas that we grow next. So it's strategic growth in certain areas where, again, you have the infrastructure like the roads, like the schools, like the parks that can accommodate those subdivisions, not always playing catch up to build the next fire station or a police substation or the school. It's working with, again, internal departments as well as those other agencies that provide those services to grow intentionally in those areas where we want to grow as a community and which the services can be provided at the levels of service that we're proud of today. So again, this tool can help us to some degree in that. So that's what I have on the master mobility map. I do have a couple more slides if you want to talk about the comprehensive plan. I'd certainly be happy to talk to you about that as well, give you a little bit more details. Again, Kim and Mike have been part of that, and even Steve to a little bit lesser degree, but Steve's been involved in that too over time. And we do have a whole connected chapter, so if you don't want to hear me talk about it, you can check it out on the website. Just go to meridiancity.org/comp plan, and you can read the whole plan or portions of it. The connected chapter is probably a lot of what you would see, and you'll see a lot of overlap too with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and the comprehensive plan. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd stand for any questions you may have.
I think, I don't think we have any questions. That was very thorough. Yeah. We do have one question.
Madam President?
Yep, Commissioner.
Caleb, do I hear you saying that like city council's gonna be able to use this map to maybe either limit growth or encourage growth? Is that something they can be taken within the current comp plan, or is this something that is out another 5-10 years?
That's a good question. So it is something that staff envisions using as we make a recommendation to council to either validate that, yes, this subdivision we think is appropriate because there's adequate infrastructure in place, or it's coming in the next year or two, or whatever the case may be. So we'd share that information with the council. We don't envision them, doing that at the dais and figuring that out, but we'll do that analysis for them. there's an offshoot tool that's really related to this, calling it the service impact tool, that looks a lot of that. And again, Ms. Warren's been involved in a lot of developing that tool that looks at pathways and schools, not just as educational opportunities, but other places to recreate as well as gather. So to answer your question, not directly, it would be available to them, but we won't ask them to look at that directly. But as staff, we would look at it and go, this is on McDermott Road, and McDermott's a 2-lane roadway, stop controlled. We don't think it's a good idea to put 1,000 homes out there. So it's another data point that we can use to make a recommendation. Or again, if it is, it's to its ultimate build out and there's capacity there and there haven't been a lot of crashes or accidents, we can say, yeah, this seems to be a good project to go ahead and approve.
Okay, so in a sense, it's because I was not directly involved, but heard of, came down to, or I actually listened to it online, but on a subdivision going onto a road, and then, because ACHD gets involved with whether or not they think it's okay, and then obviously city council does it, and so this is to kind of maybe tie that together, so you still will get their recommendation, but then the staff could potentially not override it or encourage it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, again, Madam Chair, Commissioner, we haven't gone this far with the council on what they expect staff to do with this, but again, we would share that information. This project is on McDermott Road. It's a 2-lane roadway, stop controlled. You draw your own conclusion potentially. I don't think we would do anything that would conflict, hopefully, with the staff report that ACHD is putting together, but we'd want to share that information. And again, maybe we'll connect the dots for them sometimes, but it may be a little more, again, sharing, this is 5 miles from the nearest park. This is, that type of information, saying, that will all factor in, though, to staff's ultimate recommendation on approval or denial of a project.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, up next, we have our very own Renee White. Trunk or Treat Special Event Debrief.
Yes. I understand you would like a report of what happened and how miraculous and amazing it was.
Yes.
Yes. So, Rachel's going to pull up some pictures for us. Who got to attend this year? Yeah. Yay! We'll give Rachel a second. So, last year, the event totally exceeded our expectations and just continued to grow really rapidly with the number of participants that came. It's always hard for us to gauge exactly how many there were. We think maybe 8,000 to 10,000. It's really tough to say. We know that there was at least 3,000 pieces of candy given away, and each kid came with multiple, came with a parent or other children. So, can I open them from here? Yep, I can do that. Yep. Okay. Yep, there it is. Okay, so last year we had two very distinct challenges that we had to work on for this year. The first was just the very, very long lines that came with the event. And the second was we got some comments that people didn't know where things were located at. Things that were essential, like restrooms, first aid, where the stage was. So we made some concerted efforts to fix both of these things. So there were, the first that we did was we created a public map. So the public map let people know where all these services were located. One of the first things that you'll also see is there are multiple entrances and exits. We did not try to get everyone to come in from one certain place, but rather to spread out and come in from all of the different streets. So we've listed all of the entrances and exits on the map. Once inside, we encourage them all to roam around clockwise so that there was some sense of where to go and sense of order once you were inside. But we encourage people to jump from one place to another if there wasn't treaters in a particular line. You can also see that there's shows where the food is, where the restrooms are, where some potential parking locations are. So you can also see the other thing that we did to minimize the impact from last year is we closed Broadway from Main Street to 3rd Street, so we had quite a bit more room. We ended up with almost nearly the same amount of trunks that we've had in the past. Every year I'm hoping there's going to be more. We do everything that we can to market it and to encourage trunks to come in, including we don't charge any sort of fee to come and participate. There is, of course, an investment on their part of candy and decorations, but we let everybody in for free. So we did end up using half of Broadway. We didn't end up using the entire lane, but it did create some breathing room. We also last year noticed that there was quite a few people walking on Broadway, even though it wasn't a closed road. So we wanted, for the safety of everybody, to close that space. The other thing that we did is we parked our trunks every other space. So rather than every space, just giving it all a little bit of breathing room. Before the public arrived, it looked a little bit empty, and as soon as the public arrived, it was packed. It worked really well. So those were the 4 things that we did to mitigate the problems that we had last year. Steve knows I was texting him. It's like, no lines, no lines, no lines. Oops, there's a line, but there was there for maybe 20 minutes, and then they got inside really quickly. We discovered that about 8:30 it started to thin out, where last year at about 8:30 we still had people in line waiting to get in. So we think about the same number of people came through. I'm saying that based on, I talked to quite a few of the trunks that were there last year, asked them how many pieces of candy they bought last year, how many pieces of candy they bought this year, and how many that they handed out. So the last thing that we did that was a little different is we offered a game area. Some of the comments that I had heard from some of the past trunks were that kind of felt a little bit like a grab and go. So we offered a place where if you wanted to do a game that allowed you to interact with the parents a little bit longer, interact with the kids a little bit longer, whether that be because you wanted to sign them up for something, for a giveaway, or if they're a church and wanted to talk a little bit about what, where they could come to church. Those types of, the game area was offered for that. So everything that we did, I think, worked great, but I would love your feedback. I know Dom was there in costume, and thank you for coming and supporting the event. And I didn't actually run into you. So I would love questions, feedback, comments.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gelsomino?
Renee, I think this year was a success. You touched on what I was going to ask, was if there were fewer trunks this year, because it did feel emptier. And while I understand the, aspect of we want it safer, we want it less hectic, I'm a people person and I love large crowds, having grown up in a big city my entire life, or most my entire life. And so it did feel a little empty, but now that you elaborated.
Explain that some of that was intentional.
Yes, it was intentional.
Yeah.
It pretty much answered all my questions, but it was a huge success. I want to commend and express my appreciation for the cultural celebration that you had for the Day of the Dead. Mm-hmm. The performance was wonderful by the performers. I think those instances and moments of cultural, awareness or diversity.
Incidental learning opportunities.
Yeah, they're incidental learning opportunities. I think those are wonderful.
Yes, and they come and they perform for free. So I love them as well. Not because of that.
So I think I went to all the last 3 years, and this by far less stressful, less people kind of, you're not getting pushed. I loved it. I loved the added space and the ability. It wasn't such of an issue to go around one if there were kids stopped doing whatnot, because there was just more room to do that, and you could see you weren't like cutting lines on the other side, and it was just much more, yeah, it was much nicer. I really like how the bigger room.
Great,
Huge,
great.
huge improvement.
Good.
I did see the Meridian Parks and Rec Commission booth with MIAC members. Was that?
They helped, so the Parks and Rec tent was set up as a identifier, and it was our first aid spot as well as our lost kids area spot. And so the MIAC
but I did see
staffed, partially staffed it.
Yes.
Yes, so that there would be somebody there throughout the entire event in case there was some sort of incident. That was requested by our police and fire. We're working on improved safety communications. And so they were just hoping that we would make sure that there was a specific spot and that we would have it staffed, so. But you guys are welcome to come and staff it next year if you want.
I saw the tent and I saw the MIAC, and I was like, I didn't realize
Yeah.
we were even doing this. I didn't see the sign or anything, and it was kind of in the game row, I believe, or near the game.
Right next
So
to the stage, so
I
if there was an emergency, they could get
I was like,
to
I
the
can't tell what
stage
the
for
game
announcements
is here.
quickly. Perhaps we should put up some more signs that indicate why
why they're there.
why it's there, sure.
So, but yeah, I thought it was great.
Madam
Really improvements.
President.
Gelsomino?
Renee, just to, I guess, go over that, MIAC last year co-sponsored or had a bigger hand in the trunk or treat, and this year had less, so that's why we had their presence at the Parks and Rec booth versus them being more engaged.
They also staffed their own booth where they created a game and gave away candy. So they did do that. They were also involved this year. Getting MIAC to actually run the event is problematic just because they're not in session during the summertime when a lot of the permits need to be done, when a lot of the things need to be done. So they're great hands-on help the day of the event is where we've landed with that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, was there anything over here? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So just one more thing, if you haven't had the opportunity, and if you don't, Shelley always takes amazing pictures of all of our events. You can log onto our Facebook page and see them. So you get a chance to almost relive them through that. So I appreciate your support. See you at Christmas.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to the fun of the night. Discovery Park Phase 2. Oh, I'm sorry, you're very fun of the night. That was offensive. I'm sorry. I'm excited to get up and see what the next phases of this.
She's still here. She's still here.
I was using my inside voice.
Madam President, Rachel, I got a text from my husband. They can't see the presentations on the stream. They're only seeing a small portion of it. Just wanted to let you know.
That's dedication to husband's watch.
I have no doubt he's checking on me.
He's one of the 3 viewers we get annually.
Or you said, if I have to do it, you're going to watch too.
That might be it too. Are we running late? Are we on time? But yeah, just wanted you to know.
You ready?
Yes, all of the presentations were very nice and fun. I apologize.
Yeah. No pressure there. I gotta live up to the billing. Commissioners, thank you for giving me the time to give you an update and have a discussion with you on Phase 2 of Discovery Park. We were funded for design this fiscal year, and we started right at the beginning of the fiscal year. We kind of hit the ground running. We have a new team, and I can introduce those folks to you, but I'll just dive right in. I've got some slides, and then what I did is I just got some updated site plans today, which are in the presentation, so you can get a look, but I thought maybe since I have them that I would bring the full-size copies as well, because sometimes it's a little easier to, once you hear what's going on, to get up and actually look and kind of focus in on the layout and some of the things that we're contemplating at this point. So like I said, the project team, myself, Steve, Garrett, on the recreation side, and Kim, who is a landscape architect and has been a huge help and brings fresh ideas to the table. We really appreciate it. We don't want to ever do the same thing twice. You know, even if it's successful, we want to continue to be different and innovate. The construction management team is the same construction manager that worked on phase 1. And then we've got some additional partners with this phase that we didn't have, excuse me, in that the Meridian Rural Fire District owns that 4-acre out parcel on the corner of Lake Hazel and soon to be a residential collector road. So we're partnering with them, and I'll explain that in a little more detail. And then Mike McGurdio LLC owns the property to the east of the park, and we're currently negotiating some right-of-way with them and view them as a partner. Brighton Corporation owns the parcel to the west of the park, and they have a planned subdivision that's coming, not next year, but in the near future. And then, of course, you guys and the city council. So I want to cover the goals, the program, some of the site plans, just go briefly into what some of our challenges and constraints are developing phase 2, and then some of the next steps so you can get an idea of where we're headed. So the goal with this second phase is to expand Discovery Park by approximately 25 acres. To maintain our level of service. I can't say increase our level of service, because as more people move into Meridian, they demand more park space. So at this point, we're kind of thinking that we might keep up with the level of service. And I don't want to get too caught up on the number of acres, because it's a project with a specific program and amenity set. And the acres always kind of fluctuate. You know, at the end of the day, you trim back if you need to, or you green up past what you thought you could, depending on where bids come in and what budgets might be. So we want to, the goal all along for Discovery Park has been to develop a park that uniquely blends art, entertainment, and culture. In phase 2, we want to improve access, and we want to increase parking. An increase in parking is going to better serve phase 1, and also will serve phase 2. One of the big deals for this addition to the park is to add amenities that serve teens, specifically teens, adults, and seniors. So with phase 1, we did the destination playground, we did the sand and water play, the splash pad, which are mainly geared for younger park goers and families, the picnic shelters that you can reserve. We did the small dog park area for our dog-loving friends. And so there's a gap there. There's a gap with activities for seniors and then adults and also the teens, like I said. So the other thing we want to do is provide a regionally significant facility. Just in terms of acreage, the park itself is regionally significant, but we want to make sure the contents of the park are regionally significant as well. So with those goals in mind, we kind of developed a program to help guide us as to what we think might fit best here and best serve the community. And we really there's 4 categories. There's adult amenities, teen amenities, senior amenities, and then just general comfort and convenience items that everybody enjoys and that kind of apply to those other user groups. And if I leave anything out or you have any questions at any time, just jump in. If you have a random thought, interrupt me. Just, you know, we're going to try to keep it whenever you want, just jump in. Please do, because we're here to have a discussion and get your feedback.
Mike, with the two rectangular fields, will those be large enough so they can play rugby on them?
Madam President, Commissioner Steele, rectangular fields on the softball, the multi-use?
Well, no, you have two lighted rectangular
Oh, yeah.
multi-use fields.
Yeah, and I'll go into the layout on that. So there's one that's the size of a regulation football field, and then there's another one that would be slightly smaller. And I'm thinking rugby plays on a 100-yard field?
It's larger.
It's larger.
Yeah. That's why it's always been tough for us to provide rugby fields, because they're, I don't know, about 20% larger than a normal football field.
In length or width?
Both.
Yeah, so right now, no, because, and I'll go into, and the reason I say no, we might be able to, but we would have to encroach into the dirt area of the softball field a little more. What we've done is we've overlapped. We're proposing 3 softball fields, and we have rolling fences. So you have diamonds and rectangles that utilize the same lighting system. So, but we can go into that and specifics. If you could look up what those dimensions are.
That's what I'm looking up.
Yeah, that's
I know
perfect.
a lot of them in the valley play on the football fields just because that's what's available.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So with the adult amenities, looped walking path, kind of a no-brainer. Basketball, the 3 lighted softball fields, 2 lighted rectangular fields. Both those areas overlap one another, so you can have you can play softball during the day, or you can play softball at night on Thursday night, on Friday night. You can have some sporting activities that require a rectangle. Concrete cornhole boards, community garden. We're still looking for a partner for a community garden. We have a great partner at Kleiner. And if we could just clone Julie Bokenkamp and put part of her over there and part at Kleiner, that would be awesome. So if anybody knows of a partner out there that might want to run a community garden, we have space. And we're going to set space aside in this phase for that.
Mike, the dimensions are, they go from 106 to 144 meters long and 68 to 70 meters wide. And the inside field basically is around 100 meters. But then they have the larger touch area. If you've ever watched rugby, there's a big playing area in the back so that they can try and get the ball as closest to the center as they can. So it's still play area. So that's why it's longer on the back end on each side.
Okay. Madam President and Commissioner Steele, I'm gonna take notes.
Okay.
And I may not be able to say, yeah, we can fit it in there right now, or we just absolutely can't, but that's a great suggestion. And what I'll do is I'll take that and look it up. The meters are not, I mean, they're going, I'm out. I was waiting for yards or feet or something like
Okay,
that.
well, 100 meters is 110 yards. So
Okay.
it's 10 yards on the inside playing field is 10 yards longer than a football field. And then
Okay.
there's about 10 to 20 meters, depending on how much space you
On the
have behind
rec.
each goal to play for the touch.
Okay. Let me look at that, and we'll see what we can do to
Because I know for
accommodate
years,
that.
we've been hit up for rugby fields, so.
Yeah.
And I know the high schools now are starting to
Push it.
get more
So
and
is
more
college.
players.
BSU too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And-
BSU, the Snakes have been national champions in the Valley, a few times, so.
Yeah, great. No, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely got it. Like I said, I'm going to take notes, and we'll. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gelsomino?
Mike, I'm noticing that the central theme of a lot of these amenities are sports, physical activity related. And I apologize if I've asked this in the past, but would there still be room, and has there been any could there be any leads toward potential partnerships to get a similar amenity like there is at the Oaks, where we did our bike tour? We had the outdoor gym facility, just like at Camel's Back as well. And then secondly, I noticed we have a bocce ball court, quote unquote court, at Kleiner Park. Is there room for bocce here at phase 2?
Yep. Madam President, and yes, those are, yes. I think there's room. There may not, so this is a list, and it's a wish list, and one of the reasons I'm here is to gather feedback and suggestions, and you know, the bocce ball is, to do it right, it's a real commitment, because you need to line it with oyster shells, and it requires a lot of, the material itself is pretty expensive. We looked at renovating Kleiner and taking the artificial turf out and adding oyster shells in there, and it was really spendy. But the outdoor gym is I think that's a great suggestion. You know, we want to make sure and do it right. I think some of our we have the outdoor gym at Tully that's shaded depending on when you go there, and then some of the fitness equipment at playgrounds. We did a couple of parks where if you had smaller children on the playground, that mom or dad could use a strider or something like that while the kids are running around. And I think it's a great thing. It's a great fit. You know, it keeps the whole family active. So, yeah, outdoor fitness equipment is definitely on our list. Like I said, this is not complete. So this is why we're here. Stuff like that.
Like one suggestion, if we do the bocce ball, we gotta have shade.
Yeah.
That's the major holdback on Kleiner, is they just cook there.
Yep. Yeah.
Madam President, Mike, don't worry. The Italian-American population here in Idaho is so small compared to, let's say, San Diego. My relatives aren't going to hold it against you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So adult amenities, and thank you for those suggestions. That's great. So we really want an area that is designed and would accommodate and be attractive to teens, and it's really hard. Teens are kind of in that area where they're too big to go on a playground. They can be annoying. They just want to hang out on their phones most of the time, but they also, there's a part of them that want to do activities, and you know, they want to participate in things, and they want a spot in a park that's a place that they can go and kind of be their self. Where I've been doing some research on you know, what teens like in parks, and one of the best quotes was from a teen that was in a focus group that somebody did, and they said, we're tired of moms yelling at us. And I thought that's just, you know, it just, and I don't know that anybody does, but it's like when you have bigger kids on the playground or on the zip line or around, it's just not appropriate. So they need their own space. So one of the areas that we're designing would have a shaded hangout spot, you know, that you could sit and study or socialize and have a Wi-Fi connection there. So you could just sit at some tables and hang out and be seen and see, you know, your peers, and then have that as a center node to an activity area that had some basketball courts for, you know, adjustable courts that you could shoot around or have a pickup game or do dunk contest. And then another thing that's becoming really popular is a skate spot. It's not a full-blown skate park, but it's just a skate spot, and you put some rails in there and some amenities, some little jumps, and kids can use that as you know, for skate or scooter without the expense and the regional draw of a skate park. But there's somewhere to go, and when people see somebody grinding on a wall or a table or something, we've provided an area for you to go and do those activities. The other thing that's really popular that keeps coming up is hammocking, where you bring your own hammock, you tie it to a couple of poles. So we've got a spot that's kind of nestled in this really tightly planted grove of trees that you can bring a hammock and hang out. Volleyball's real popular. We want to explore some of the off-site connections for access, non-vehicular access, specifically getting across Lake Hazel and into some of those neighborhoods that are around Hillsdale and the YMCA, that if you lived close by, you could meet. Because right now, Lake Discovery Park is on an island. I mean, it's not, it's only accessible by car. So we want to at least look at that and develop somewhat of a plan, or at least have a conversation on how we can move people into the park without a car. Bicycle pump track. We don't have any bicycle facilities in Meridian. We see that as a way of kind of filling that. 40-yard dash is real cool, real popular. It's got a timer on it, and you can race each other. You can race mom and dad. You can, that's really for all ages. We kind of just dumped it in the teen activity area, but realistically, it's for everybody.
Madam President.
Yeah.
Mike, just a quick light bulb that just popped into my head when you mentioned the shaded hangout spot. When I was in college at Boise State, one of the more popular, not more popular areas, but a heavily trafficked area where students like to hang out was the smaller amphitheater right next to Taylor Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, a massive amphitheater like we have at the bandshell at Julius Kleiner Park, but something smaller where either teens can play music, can have their bands, if that's something that does still happen nowadays. But something where the cement, quote unquote, benches are kind of built into the hillside, and it's just a small area where they can regroup.
And that's exactly what so we have in this current design, we have a raised area that has a picnic shelter over the top of it. And there would be outlets for charging stations and Wi-Fi and tables, and then from that upper seating area, if you look and you have a skate spot over here and basketball courts over here, and back here there's volleyball, and then there's hammocking behind you. So it's kind of the hub of that teen activity center, but it's sheltered, and it feels like it's isolated from other activities in the park, but it's really not. One of the things we did is we located it on or near the future residential collector, so it could be seen from the street. So it's not completely buried within the park. So if there was, there could be bad behavior, but, it just less likely if we're trying to be thoughtful about it at least. So, yes. So moving on, senior amenities, pickleball's huge. We see putting in 6 pickleball courts, a couple of pods like we have at Rita Husky Park that are close to one another. A shaded area near the courts. The courts are located near parking, near the restrooms, near drinking water, so there's that comfort and convenience is close by. The looped walking path, some of these are a little bit repetitive, convenient parking. And then in the softball field, shorter interchangeable fences, so the seniors can play softball. So we would put sleeves in the ground and put a temporary fence up, so it converts to a senior softball field pretty easily. Again, that dual use, or maximizing the most with the space we have. Checkerboards. And then some of the standard comfort and convenience, restroom space, drinking fountains, misters, benches, picnic tables, parking that's centrally located. Of course, it's ADA accessible, directional signage, just the normal stuff that we have in a park.
Madam President. Mike, just one quick thought with the senior amenities, and I know it's a bit of a stretch, but as our community continues to grow, would you ever see the need for, if you've been recently or the last time you've been to Boise State campus, the blue poles where it's either, dials 911 or an emergency. Let's say during the summer, senior has a heat stroke while at the park, but they're in such a centralized area at the park, they really, either aren't visible to anybody else who's there at the park, or just in an emergency scenario, would those potentially be able to be installed? Granted, we'd also have to add almost like a security team, emergency security team at the park itself. What are your thoughts on that?
It's great that you bring that up, because there's a program in the city of Meridian to put AEDs out in the community, and we have them in parks, and all the police cars have them. There's city facilities have AEDs, and at one time we explored putting AEDs on a pedestal similar to that in a park, where if somebody had a medical emergency, they could pop it open or call 911, and the dispatch would open the door and release it. So there might be an opportunity to do something like that, put an AED station in there. And I would say at a bare minimum, so the reason, let me back up, the reason that it never happened is we didn't have conduit. We didn't have conduit for a phone line. I think now, for some reason, you couldn't use a cell phone, but maybe that's changed. It's been 3 or 4 years. And then also electrical power was one of the big things. So I think if we identified a spot that might be good for an emergency station like that, whether it was an AED or a call box, that at least for now get the conduits in. So we have that, and it's just a matter of getting the unit and pulling the infrastructure over to power it up and to communicate. So we will definitely, at a minimum, get the conduits in and get it prepped. But we can start looking into that conversation with those AED pedestals, or even a call. I mean, I don't know if the call is quite as important, because everybody has cell phones now.
Sure.
But having an AED on site, and we have them on site, but they're in the concession stand and they're at the softball fields. But when there's nobody there, they're locked up. So to have one that's accessible would be really important. Good idea.
Thank you.
So Mike, this is kind of related to this, but the drinking fountain misting station, the combo we put in, have you heard any feedback on that?
Yeah, they're not that great.
Don't really like them?
I don't think they're that great.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you not think they're that great?
Because I think it's only cooling you off when you're over getting a drink, which is good. But if you're sitting somewhere, I think we could maybe be a little more thoughtful and do a better job, honestly.
Mike?
I like them, but I like the concept. That's not it. It's how we applied it to phase one. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mike, have we already, you've got designs over here. Have you already started putting some of this stuff together?
Yeah.
Or, because, you're talking seniors, but it doesn't have to be just a senior. But if you had an area where you had like the bocce ball courts and the checkerboard tables and all that under trellises and maybe misters, that would be a very attractive area to any adult who just wants to set, you get the pickleball by it. So it's kind of an area, kind of like you're doing with kids or whatever, to where they can get there, it's relaxing, people can hang out and talk, lots of bench seating and stuff, so it can be a gathering place. Trellises, lots of shade, misters that they can push on. Wi-Fi. I think at that point it becomes a really nice meeting area. And I just think adults in general would like to meet and hang out, and it's like, okay, kids go play, your teens go play. We're gonna go over here and relax. And I just think it'd be a great place, but to have all that kind of in an area so it's accessible and you're not, okay, the pickleball courts are over there and bocce ball's over here and we go play checkers over here.
Perfect, so hold that thought. We're gonna jump into site plans. I think we got it.
This is not my first rodeo.
Yeah, I know it's not. And I think we got it, so yeah, great thought. So this is a site plan that has both phase 1 and phase 2 in it. The line of phase 1 is right about here where the cursor is. And it goes up, and we did not do anything behind this softball field right here. So, and we can go in, I have some expanded views of each one of these areas that we can look at. So down in the lower corner right here is the kind of an active area, but Commissioner Steele, it's exactly what you were talking about. So there's the 2 pickleball pods right here that are close to the parking lot, close to the restroom, not too far away from the main playground and the shelter. But in this area right here, there's a picnic shelter. And we can talk whether it's reservable or not. The one at Settlers that we have between the tennis courts that's next to the pickleball courts, we don't reserve it. It's a place to, if you're not playing, you can take a break, get in the shade, that kind of stuff. And then also in that area is the 40-yard dash right here, a couple of basketball courts, and the pump track. So this would be that area that if we were to put a couple of bocce ball courts in, an outdoor gym, and then the area to also have that emergency call box, this would be the general zone that it would occur in. So some of this layout, you have to realize, I hate bringing plans that are this hard lined right here, because honestly, we started from nothing about 5 weeks ago, and it's come to this. So it's still, it should almost be hand-drawn to some degree, but they've got a great start. So that is the kind of the active area and the senior area, but it is usable by everyone. There's basketball there, there's the pump track for younger kids, and shade, and it's also near the playground. So up in the top here, in the top right here is the teen area. And like I said, there's expanded views of each one of these. So volleyball courts right here, the hammocking area with a bosque of trees, that's heavily shaded, the poles that you can tie hammocks to. This is that raised seating area right here, kind of the hangout spot, charging stations, Wi-Fi, tables. I've got a couple of basketball hoops right here, and then the skate spot is on this side. So right now there's stairs that go down into these areas. This is an elevated stage. And then shade. And the other thing with that is there's enough light spill from the softball fields when they're on that you can easily, without too much additional lighting, if you're in there at dusk or in the evening, it's going to be pretty well lit, honestly. And then you come down here, and then there's the 3 softball fields. But briefly, this area across here and up here is additional parking. So one of the things that we thought about when we initially started laying the park out is it's different than Settlers Park, because Settlers Park has 2 parking lots. And if you drive into one parking lot and it's full, you have to drive out and get back on the street, go through the intersection, and go to the other parking lot to try to find parking. So with this concept, we wanted the parking to be internal of the park, and that you drive into the park and you find parking in the park. And you don't have to leave and get back on the street, which causes additional congestion at intersections and on the road. And it forces people into the neighborhood, because they look for a parking space and maybe in the east parking lot at Settlers, and they just go park in the neighborhood. They don't want to bother going around. Maybe they're running late. Maybe it's just, I don't want to go there and then be turned away. And then so it kind of encourages parking in the neighborhood, which for the most part we want to discourage that. So that's the general site plan. Some of this area up in here is going to be determined later whether it gets greened up or not, because we don't have an opinion of cost yet on this, what's drawn, but that's coming soon. So that's just phase 2, just another look. We have the pickleball in the active area right here, the 3 softball fields, restroom in the center, a small playground, the teen area and the parking lot. We've got about 400 or 525 parking places planned with this new lot, so it's substantial. So the active area, you can see, kind of got orientated already with the pickleball, basketball courts, pump track. There's the shelter. I mean, as you can see, there's plenty of room to put an outdoor gym or bocce ball in there. It's kind of that active, all ages.
But I think, Mike, on the one side, you've got way too much activity for that relaxing Wi-Fi area where people can sit and relax, because you're going to have bicycles going in and out of there. You're going to have basketball games with all the yelling and stuff. So if you're having people that want to, I mean, you've got the pickleball, but honestly, it's a senior activity and there's not a bunch of yelling and screaming and stuff like that. So if you've got a bunch of people who are trying to just find a place to hang out and relax, putting a basketball court and a pump track by it is not a good idea. Now, you could put a bocce ball court and stuff like that over there, but again, lots and lots of shade.
Yeah.
So you can move basketball courts over by the teen area. I think that works better as far as what you're trying to accomplish.
So right now there's a couple hoops over there.
Right. You don't have the full size.
We don't have full size, so this is full size basketball. So yeah, that's an interesting thought. Can we explore that a little bit?
Yeah, I think you're trying to hit a different audience here than the basketball and the pump track.
Yeah.
Total different audience. So if you mix them, you're going to create, one's going to chase out the other. It's going to be the older ones that are looking for that relaxing place. They're going to leave.
So this shelter right here was meant, I think, the way we thought of it is just a place to take a break from when you're playing a game of basketball or playing a game of pickleball, riding your bike, that's a place that you can gather and get into the shade.
But you have that on the other side too.
In the shelters?
You have the shelter up there where you have the 2 basketball courts.
So that's the teen area.
Right.
Yeah.
To me, I think the basketball and the pump track go up there with those versus in here. I think you want your more moderate activity things here. Then, your pickleball, bocce ball, maybe put your cornhole games, and the checkerboard, all that stuff needs to go in here because it's a lower activity area than throwing a bunch of teens and, basketball courts and pump tracks and all that. I think that all goes in one area, and otherwise I think you're going to have a bunch of activity here that's going to chase the one group out.
Okay, let us look at it.
You'll see a struggle of the generation.
Yeah.
No, the older guys aren't going to mess with it. They're just going to not go.
Right.
Yeah, so we want it to be as comfortable as we possibly can for as many generations as we possibly can. You make a good point.
Otherwise, you're going to get those complaints. They keep yelling at us.
The millennials.
Yeah, well, except that pickleball players are there from 5 in the morning until 10. Basketball players are from 10 to 5 in the morning. And no, I'm just kidding. We'll look at it. Good ideas. Thank you.
Madam President, it could be, Craig, that you flip it, right? Because the pump track could potentially be closer to the normal kid, you know, if you're talking the the kids are at the normal playground, which is this upper circle, right? Area. And then you have the pump track, basketball courts, and then you're kind of going from high energy.
So one's not crossing into the other. You have a hierarchy of energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Age, just do the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
age.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a solution there, out there. I like it. That's good.
And then that
Good
way
job.
you still see the teen area from the road, why you have it
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, with the constraint that we have with the gas line over there, we don't want to put a lot of high dollar amenities over the top of the gas line, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but yes.
So the gas line is that dotted line that's kind of lightly underneath.
It's
that
right.
crosses, right?
It's right here.
Yes.
So from this edge
To that edge, you
to
don't
that
want.
edge,
So Mike, what if we put the tennis, or the basketball court right next to that, on the north end of that second, or the outside pickleball court?
yeah, I actually think flipping them is probably,
Well, actually, just putting the basketball court on that north end of that pickleball court would work. You've just had your mouse. Yeah, but the gas line comes further up here, right to your left, right there, Mike,
Right
and
up in
down.
here.
That area right there.
yeah, I like it.
Because it doesn't get into your gas line, so they're not gonna tear
Yep.
it up. And, it's gonna stay, there's nothing really in that area as it is now.
Yeah.
Madam President, so, sorry, making myself laugh, but I was thinking you could take the Trump approach and build a wall. But in seriousness, I mean, what about like a berm or something to separate pickleball from basketball or something that's
Yeah.
pretty low cost, right? And
Yeah,
a
some
grass.
contours
That might just, visual and
Yeah.
noise, just, that
Even
might
if
be a
it's-
cheap option
Even
to,
if it's only this high, that just kind of provides a little separation. That's a good idea. Thank
Right,
you.
landscaping and stuff.
or
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
big
landscaping.
shrubs,
But I
trees.
still don't think you want it on that
something
side.
to-
I think you reverse them, and I think you get better.
We'll, no, this is great.
Because if it's out of
Hierarchy
sight, out of
energy,
mind.
I'm telling ya. Have it flow.
Do you have a trusted area or?
Yeah.
Do you mind if the whole, the existing park, phase 1 and phase 2, how it's integrated?
Right there. So I think Commissioner Steele was talking about putting the basketball courts right in here.
Yeah.
Is that where the zip lines are?
No,
No.
they are right here.
Okay.
So with that pipeline right there that goes across that line, is there any possibility of adding trees though, on like one side to provide more shade towards that?
So we can't plant trees in the gas line right away
But is there a long-term plan that we're gonna add trees there?
to the pipeline. We can't.
No.
They have,
Madam President, are you talking about like just taking this line of trees and going down the same line,
So-
not
so-
on not on the gas line?
Right, I know there has to be a clearance for the gas line.
Yeah.
But outside of the gas line, could we just add
Oh,
more trees?
absolutely.
On that edge?
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, this is really just,
Rough draft.
yeah, we're talking program right now. Nothing has landed, even though this looks fairly hard-lined and set, it's not. The trees, I mean, we don't have a pathway looping down here. We don't show the road that we need to build or the pathway. We don't have nearly the number of trees. I mean, this is just drawn for graphic presentation right now and doesn't represent kind of a finished product, so.
Madam President,
Commissioner Delcino?
Mike, just out of curiosity, where would you envision if we were to get a partner for a community garden in this phase? I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
mentioned
great.
it, but I may have missed it.
Great question. So right where the cursor is, this gray square right here is our maintenance building.
Okay.
And just like Kleiner, it's a great fit to have that, kind of that use next to the maintenance building for storage bins for debris or compost or whatever, and just service and the support that we give the community garden. They're always right there. There's a restroom in the shop at Kleiner that people can use. So that would go down in this area right here somewhere, is what we're thinking.
Would Julie be interested or willing to market an opening for a partnership and see if she has any connections within her network that would be willing to do that?
I could ask.
I mean, I'd be happy to ask. I wasn't sure if that was a thought or a plan that had been already.
Hadn't thought about it.
Okay.
I'll ask. Yeah, thank you.
Mike, if you're gonna have a community garden out there, you don't want that basketball court and pump track in the middle of them.
Right, so.
Just
so,
saying.
So.
John and I've got this all laid out, we're good.
So the distance between the pump track and the corner of the maintenance building is about 400 feet. The scale on this is kind of tricky to contemplate. It's big. It's big, yeah.
Madam
So let me
President?
just finish this note.
I'm sure, Mike, you're going to get to this, but am I to guess that the rectangular boxes you've got by the softball fields are the two lighted rectangular fields that you were talking about in your would like to have?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So let's go forward again. So teen area.
Volleyball, grass, sand?
I think it's sand. Kind of like it.
I like the thought of sand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, if grass gets muddy.
Yeah.
It's not, grass is not good, and it gets compacted, it's really hard. I think the grass is good, or the sand is good.
Well, and a hard court would take more maintenance, I would assume.
Yeah, people love the sand. Yeah, so I think one or two. I mean, one's
Can I vote
cool.
for two?
I was thinking two, so yeah, I think we're good. Could actually accommodate more people and have a little tournament or something, or rotate through, you know.
And look at the groups that show up out at Kleiner and set up their own and use the other one. I mean, this is a great area for that because they can move over in this open area.
Yep, pretty awesome. So that's what we're thinking there. So just while we're here, you can see the entrance road comes out. This will be the main entrance to the park. So where you enter the park today will not be the main entrance. It will come off of this residential collector that will be built along the east property line. So the entrance that we're using today will more than likely become a right in, right out, and it won't be full access. So ACHD would like us to direct traffic to this residential collector to an intersection on Lake Hazel and then disperse from there. Oops.
Will there be a light up there?
We don't know if that's going to be a requirement with this phase. We think the only way to get pedestrians across Lake Hazel safely is to install a traffic light, and Steve and I were just talking that there may be an opportunity to accelerate if ACHD has it in a work plan, you know, maybe we.
Lobby?
Yeah, maybe there's a partnership there to accelerate it, just for connectivity, and we know that it's coming, or something real.
You're gonna have a couple major subdivisions on each side of this and a whole lot more traffic, and if you're
Right.
shoving them all inside of this neighborhood, they're not gonna be real happy about it if there's not a way to get in and out easily.
Yeah.
Because
So
the traffic on Locust, or on Lake Hazel is gonna balloon when you put Brighton on one side and these guys on the other.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, and those are all the things that we need to. We had a full traffic study done for both phase 1 and phase 2, and we need to probably we don't need another traffic study, but we need to update the traffic impact report based on what we're planning to build. So some of those things are going to flush out. We're about 6 weeks into the process right now, and we're planning to go to ACHD pretty soon and have a conversation about what needs to happen here. But we know that we know that this is the main entrance to the park. That much we know. So softball area, 3 lighted softball fields, a shelter in the center, playground area, restroom, concession building. You can see the rectangles that are basically, they're penciled in. So these side fences on the middle field will roll back and out of the way. And then on the lights, we would have 2 different settings. So we'd have a softball setting and we'd have a football setting, or a rectangle setting, whatever you want to call it, rugby setting. So if there's a sporting event that has the need to use the rectangles, we can turn the lights down and off in certain areas to save energy and minimize the impacts to the neighborhood and all the things, and just light the rectangles. So we're trying to get that multi-use, get as many different people on these fields. I mean, it's our goal to have these fields used 7 days a week, during the day, well into the evening, whether it's Little League, adult softball, regular softball for our programs, rectangular uses, whether it's flag football, rugby, soccer, lacrosse, all those things.
Like you're talking more and more lighted areas and just, more passive areas with lighting and stuff. Are we planning on changing our park hours in Discovery Park?
We're headed there, only because it's going to be softball.
Right.
I mean, it's just like we have people in the park and it's hard to control where they go. So you're inviting them in the park after dark with softball lights.
Right.
And you can't control. You can't say, well, once you go out of the confines of, you hit the edge of where it's dark, you can't go there. I mean, it's impossible to police.
Right.
So
That's what I'm saying. I think it's a good idea.
I think we're talking about some other lit areas that when the softball lights go off, the park's closed. We haven't really talked about what that means, but I think it's something like that.
Because it's already dark outside now, and to have areas where people can go hang out, it's still a good idea in the wintertime.
Yeah, as long as they're safe and secure. I would personally, I'd rather see more areas lit than more dark areas, because I think the light makes it safer.
Madam President, I'm glad Commissioner Steele brought that up, because it was a comment that I had made during our agenda meeting with the mayor, was that I've noticed people at Story Bark Park who are there later after hours, just because, there is lighting from the softball fields. There are people there who are at 8, 9, 30, at night during the summer.
Yeah, and you know what?
It's hard to control that.
Personally, I don't know. I don't know if we care. They're out there. I mean, it's obviously it's lit. So policing that would just be like, well, why? What are we going to lock the gate? Yeah. So, some of the challenges and constraints. Obviously, the Williams pipeline. We have a 100-foot wide swath that limits what we can do in there. Can't have any vertical structures or trees. All the utility infrastructure needs to go under the gas pipes and back up again, which they're down about 5 feet, and then you need separation, so you end up with this 12 to 14-foot trench that things go under. Water, power, sewer. Vehicular access, the current driveway, we talked about that. We need to construct a half a collector road plus 12 feet. Sidewalk on Lake Hazel, to the park entrance, getting people across Lake Hazel, future conversation. Obviously, pedestrian access is going to be tough until it builds out, but we're going to work on it. We're going to do our best to get it connected somehow. And then just miscellaneous, the sewer right now is currently unavailable. Brighton is going to bring sewer in from Amity and Meridian Road. They own almost everything from the park all the way to Amity and Meridian Road. And they're going to leapfrog all of that, put sewer in, and then build west of the park first.
What about connecting pathways to the park? Can we
Yeah.
work with Brighton and try and get some stuff in?
There is a pathway that is, we have the Williams Pipeline pathway that runs right through the park. So we're not gonna, we're gonna be more or less on that Williams Pipeline, but what we need to do is we'll condition Brighton to get folks, because part of the pipeline is on that, we'll call it the Pinnacle, that's the name of the subdivision that's going in west of the park. So what we'll do is we're going to direct pedestrian traffic to the intersection. We don't want to put a hawk signal at the quarter mile. So the half mile will have an signal, eventually a signalized intersection at the park collector, but we'll want to make sure that Brighton installs a pathway to the corner of Locust Grove and Lake Hazel to then go north and then continue on the Williams Pipeline pathway. And then there's another one, the far lateral is close by, and
Years ago, there was
there's a
somebody else
couple
that was
others.
going to build in there, and they had a whole pathway system all set up in there over that pipeline. And then
Yeah.
they kind of went away, but
Yeah.
now they're back with Brighton. So, that, to me, seems to be one of the best places for a
Yep.
nice pathway in that part of town.
Absolutely, yeah, it is. And it's on our map. And whoever builds near it, whoever owns it and builds near it, will condition them to build a pathway.
Madam President, Commissioner, if I can just add to that. There is a subdivision north of Lake Hazel. It's currently named Lavender Heights. And I was sort of part glee and part apology, but the developer of that subdivision, it's really pretty much directly north of the park. There are a lot of pathways. There's one along the canal, and there's some working through the subdivision. So I think that will drive a bit more traffic and probably crossing of Lake Hazel, and also they'll have to feed through that mid-mile connector. So it will accelerate some of the improvements that are good for pedestrians. And there were a significant number of pathways conditioned as part of that development. So that's kind of exciting for us, at least.
Yeah. Yep, good thoughts. So, next steps. We need to finalize the program. I think we made a lot of progress tonight. Coordinate with the Pinnacle subdivision, coordinate right away with the Rural Fire District in Magurdio. On to City Council. We need to really transition from schematic design to design development, get some costs in, come back to you guys and talk. Finalize design, final coordination with some of our agency partners, ACHD and alike, and utility providers. Budget request, we're hoping to get down to that point by probably April 1st, so we've got a lot of work to do. And finalize construction documents and bid this phase a year from now for a spring of 2021 groundbreaking. So that's our goal. We've got a lot of work to do, and I will stand for questions.
And can we get some drawings or whatever of that so we can take a look at it kind of on our own?
Mhm.
Just email so we can
Sure.
scale it out and kind of look at it. So how far is it from the restroom area out to the pickleball courts?
The plans we have, I'm not sure exactly, 100 feet probably. Well, the gas easement's 100 feet. So then the restroom's another 50 feet off the gas line easement, so 50 to 100.
Then if
150.
you go back to the area back there, you're talking a couple hundred to 300 feet, right?
It's getting too far. I think it's too far. I think the other items need to move. I think the pickleball needs to stay where it is.
Right. No,
Yeah.
no, I'm just saying that, you know, you're starting to get a ways out there for having a passive area without any restrooms.
Yeah.
You're
So-
almost talking 100 yards or whatever for people just sit and
We're-
relax, otherwise it's that.
So we're gonna have 2 restrooms in the park. Someone's gonna need to walk.
No, I,
Who is it? Probably not seniors.
exactly.
The kids can walk.
Well, that's my point, is
Yeah.
if you push that further out, then,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things, like, when we were talking, it was, where do we put pickleball courts? They need to be by the parking lot and close to the restroom. But number one, we can add all the other things, shade and, you know, we may need to, well, no, they need to stay this way, orientated north-south. But let us work on it. We will. We'll come up with something. We'll have a solution for that. Well, so we appreciate comments and we like those ideas that we can use as guidance. And, you know, when you have a team of landscape architects and construction people and even landscape architects on staff, that, you know, we take those suggestions as guidance and opportunities to make things better. And sometimes, if they don't, we'll be honest, you know, and say, hey, we did this instead because we think this is a better solution. So,
Madam President,
Commissioner Gelsomino?
Mike, just a quick question. As the size of this regional park continues to grow, obviously walking the entire thing is going to be quite a feat. Will there be a future where Bird or Lime or whoever may come out of the woodwork in the future be allowed in the park as a mode of transportation?
Bird right now is allowed in our parks, and it wouldn't be any different with this park. So our parks are geo-fenced for speed control. So they're 7 miles an hour instead of 15, and they're off limits in playground, and I don't see anything changing. We would geo-fence the softball area, we would geo-fence the teen area, and geo-fence the playground. But if you want to ride 7 miles an hour on a Bird scooter, it's no different than Kleiner or Settlers or anywhere else. So, yeah. What else?
I have a question. You know how, I haven't done it yet, but Settlers Park does, like, don't they do like this, they have a snow activity. They're one of, like, the few places where you can go to the park and do like snowshoeing or something like that.
Yeah, snowshoeing.
Yep, there's something special that people do in Settlers Park and that involves snow. That we set them up. Am I the
No.
only one that's aware of that?
I know about Eagle Island, but not.
Oh, somebody has mentioned it to me. You can go like snowshoe. There's something in our Settlers Park that goes on every year, and I thought, well, what is that, and how do we get it at another park to have an off-season activity?
So there isn't anything in the park, but we might have something in our activity guide that meets at Settlers Park and like a pickup point
Okay.
to go snowshoeing.
Okay.
Yeah, or lessons, but we don't
All
have
right.
snow.
That was probably the misunderstanding.
Yeah,
but
that's-
I thought, I was like, why don't we do that at the other parks for
Yeah.
winter activity?
That'd be great to have a, yeah.
Trying to come up with ideas for the off-season, because this is
Yeah,
our.
yeah. Yeah.
Should get rid of that. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, commissioners, are we good to push through staff reports? Does anybody need a break? We're good? All right, let's do this.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward.
Onward and upward. I do have several updates, but I will try and make them quick. But there's a lot going on right now. A lot of people think that when the weather turns cold and the lawns aren't being mowed, that there's Parks and Rec must be just, really slow, but it is not. So here's my top 10, really fast, of things that I think you would care about, want to know about. Number one, The community center process is about to kick off. I don't know if you've read about it in the paper, but the Community Development Department in the city and MDC have partnered up to put out an RFP this last month. Actually, it was out in September, opened in October, but just recently acted on by council to accept a proposal out at the existing community center in Centennial Park location. The MDC group acted on the overarching agreement this morning. It's planned to go to council next week. If approved, that will kick off a design process that will involve you. I expect that the design group would be in front of you twice over the next 6 months, once with the draft plan, once with the final plan, to get feedback. But it's a very exciting possibility that we might be able to see a grand new addition to downtown as a community center faster than we would be able to build it ourselves. With just the impact fees we'll be collecting over time. So stay tuned for more on that. Number 2, the Charlie Roundtree Ball Field dedication on October 18th. This is going back a month. I just wanted to hit on that as a highlight. It's happened since the last commission meeting. Some of you were able to be there. Appreciate your attendance. It was a wonderful event, a great opportunity for us to honor longtime councilman Charlie Roundtree, who was also involved with the early formation of the Parks Department, and that was great. So we're grateful to have that ball field with his name on it in Fuller Park. Lots of administrative work going on over the past month. The start of a new fiscal year does the annual evaluation season, and so lots of that has been going on behind the scenes with staff. Number 4, we've also been doing a lot of work on KPIs, or key performance indicators. As those get developed and accepted by the mayor and council, we'll be glad to give you updates here as well. The 5th one is a process called PBB, which is performance-based budgeting. There's been a year-long process for that, led by our finance department, but every department in the city is involved, including ours, structuring all of our activities into programs. There's actually the first phase of that just ended. Phase 2 starts tomorrow with scoring of all of the programs against the city strategic plan. And anyway, there's a lot going on with that. Number 6 is the Arts and Culture Coordinator. Some of you will probably know Hillary Blackstone, who was in the clerk's office, was the liaison between the city and the Arts Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission. She left the city a month or so ago. It's been decided that position will be moving from the clerk's office to the Parks and Recreation Department, keep a lot of the same duties, adding the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and we're going to change to the title of the position to the Arts and Culture Coordinator. That position will be housed in our department. We did our first round of interviews last week. Our next round of interviews is next week. We're working to get a cubicle built, and there's lots going on that side. Number 7, Caleb mentioned some of the work that's been going on with the bus routes related to the comprehensive plan and the future of what that might be. There is one bus route specifically that's been funded by the city council for this next year, and Caleb just invited me to a meeting on that last week. Valley Regional Transit led the meeting. It affects us because the origin and destination points on the 2 ends are Kleiner Park on the east and the 10-mile node on the west. Still lots to be decided on actual routes and stops and things like that, but it will likely have a bus stop in relation to Kleiner Park. So more to come on that. Number 8, the South Meridian YMCA. I know they were before you a couple months ago with an update, but we were just invited out 2 weeks ago for a meeting out there to see progress on their construction of Phase 2, which is going on, and meetings with all of the partners out there, the school district, the YMCA, St. Luke's, the library, ourselves. And their process is moving forward, and we're excited to see that move forward, especially to Phase 2B, which is what everyone's really waiting for, which is the aquatics facility, right? So they haven't broken ground yet on that piece, but they have broken ground on the expansion on the front side. Number 9 is Christmas. You heard a lot of the events. I just wanted to mention the Christmas tree came to the plaza yesterday. The City Hall Christmas tree goes up in about a week and a half on November 25th. And we look forward to seeing everyone as part of the other events, including the parade, and hope you'll come out and join us there. Number 10, I'll just call projects. I'm not going to go into the details because it includes things like Home Court and Discovery Park, been a big part of that. Garrett and Mike deserve most of the credit on leading those projects forward, but it's been a big part of all of our lives over the last month. So that's my update, and I'll stand for any questions.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Steve. Mike, do you have a separate one? Or Garrett, you're both listed on here, so I'm just going to give you an opportunity, but it sounds like you covered everyone. Are we good?
You heard what I'm working on.
Yep. Garrett?
I think the only thing that I would add is, you heard from Renee with special events. I mean, she's a rock star when it comes to that stuff. She's always looking for the wow factor in all the events she puts on. So, Trunk or Treat, you heard that. She's deeply involved with Christmas, as you guys obviously know. And Chelsea, our volunteer coordinator, who you heard from last month, obviously is right there with Renee, deep into the events. Sports, we just had the Holiday Classic Volleyball Tournament. Maggie, our new sports coordinator, which I don't know if you guys have all met yet, but maybe, hopefully you guys can meet her soon. She absolutely killed it, did awesome, had a really good turnout for the tournament, and she actually included more to like the raffle, stuff like that. She outdid myself and Tyler if you put us both together when it comes to that. We always raise on like the raffle, $250 was a good year. She raised over $800. You know, she included a bake sale, raffle. I mean, kind of put us to shame on that stuff. But she did a really good job with that. Home court, Steve mentioned. Work on, I think we're finally fully part-time staffed over there with different things. So Jake's got that all organized. I went over there this afternoon. The renovation's looking awesome. They got the carpet in there, Bay 5 flooring's down, it's all painted. The restrooms are all up and running, ready to go, ADA compliant. They have some minor things to do in Bay 5 itself. They painted the pickleball and volleyball lines in there. They have the mirrors up on the wall. It looks sharp. They put different carpet in for like the walking path. The next step is we can't play in there because the lines just got painted literally today. But the next thing they're doing is updating the ADA compliancy for the drinking fountains, high-low stuff in there. And those are supposed to come in tomorrow, installed early next week. So it's looking good. So if you guys have a chance to stop by there and check it out, they're open until like 10:30 because of stuff going on in there. But it's pretty cool to see, especially from when we first moved in to now. It's a huge difference. Other than that, classes and camps, our activity guide is coming out here soon, so stay tuned.
Madam President, so Garrett, do we have anything on the books or the plans to do like a grand reopening, unveiling to the public of all of the work that we're doing out at Home Court? Because I think it would be really beneficial, whether it's just Shelley doing stuff on our Facebook page or some kind of social media to say, hey, look, we're really, improving things for the community and look at what we've done with Home Court.
Steve, you want to take it?
I'll take that one because we've discussed it and aren't quite sure how far to go and would welcome your feedback. Because we just did a grand reopening 2 years ago of the Home Court when we took it on and did all the initial improvements and changed the sign and that. So a grand reopening 2 years after another grand reopening,
Maybe not a grand reopening, but some kind of social media like, hey, come check out our new...
We should definitely do that.
Right? Something to be able to say, hey, we've got all of this new stuff that the community isn't going to know about if we don't get it out there in some kind. I agree. You don't want to do a grand reopening to have a grand reopening, but at the same time, this
We need to
is
figure out what the
really
right thing, because it's a big deal.
amenities.
It's worth
Yeah.
celebrating, and we just need to figure out, do we cut a ribbon, or do we just go forward with with a social media
Yeah.
blast and press releases or whatever. But we'll work with Shandy in the mayor's office as we get closer. I think there's still some time, because I think it's supposed to be finished by the end of the calendar year, which they're well on track for, it sounds like.
Just to add a little bit to that, Steve, we have a radio partner too. We're trying to get some radio stuff out there. We're waiting for our activity guide really to kind of get set in stone for what we're going to offer in Bay 5. That'll start in January. But we're looking at doing exactly kind of what you're saying, working with Shelley and Shandy, just to kind of talk about, hey, this is what we have. Come check it out. It's not just a sports facility. It's recreation, community ed classes as well. So
Yeah, because most
stay
people I
tuned.
know, when I say home court, they go, "Oh, basketball."
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
No, there's a lot more in there than this, just sports. And that's one reason why we call it home court a family recreation center. So in Bay 5, we want it to be community ed classes, dance classes, yoga classes, just, mom and me classes, community ed classes. So it's not just necessarily sports. Is it heavy use sports? Absolutely. But we want that other piece of that too. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Stay tuned. Yeah.
All right, and before we, wait, are you going to request?
Well, I was going to ask a question about next month's meeting.
Oh, that's what, I just want to say before we go to ask for a motion to adjourn, next month's meeting is not here, so
The
everyone,
maintenance facility?
yep, and I'm sure that Rachel's going to give us how to get to the Lenarks Park shop directions before then. In our
I
email.
will, yes.
But just want to make sure you guys have that in your mind, it's not here. And then also before that will be the parade, and so we talked a while ago, everyone's just wearing colorful elf costumes, everyone's on board with that, right? And how, do I have a head count who thinks they're coming?
Was it elf costumes or just Christmas related? Something
Madam
Christmassy.
President, I think we had decided on just different colored elf hats, but yours truly will be the Grinch this year, so I will not be with the Parks and Rec.
It was your
Float.
idea. This seems like a okay.
Cancel Christmas.
Canceling it all. All right, so.
Wow, you're a Grinch.
That's from Robin Hood, isn't
So
it?
do we have a couple commissioners that will be able to ride the float? We have,
I'll be there, but I'm not clear what I'm wearing.
okay,
I will be out of the country. I'm sorry.
she's a no?
I was planning on being there.
Okay.
Yes, that's a yes, sorry.
Thank you. It's like pulling.
I was planning on it, but I decided
I
not
feel
to
like I
because
just-
Dom's not gonna be there.
Face.
Right.
Okay,
No, I will be there.
perfect. Were you gonna say something?
Not sure my costume.
I was just looking across by the way at Kim, wondering if she wanted to give a verbal staff report, or if just wanted
name
to
was
stand
not
by
on
your
this. I
written staff
apologize.
report. So.
This is, Madam President and Steve, good idea. This has come up a couple of times, and I do come to these meetings, and I wonder if I might reach more of you more effectively if I did just give a verbal report as opposed to the written. So I am open to doing that. I'm not particularly prepared tonight, but I could throw out a couple of highlights.
Just a couple highlights would be great. I wouldn't quit doing the written one. I just think there's enough cool stuff going on with pathways it's worth mentioning since it's a top priority.
I agree. I am excited that we got final approval from ACHD for our James Court sidewalk widening. Had a bit of a snag there when it got called a pathway, and then there were some different requirements, and but we managed to cooperate, and we have approved plans, and I'm just filling out documents to request that be put out to bid. So that's hitting our timing window pretty well in terms of catching contractors when they're winding down their season and looking for projects to build next year. So James Court connects to Bud Porter across Meridian Road, north of Cherry Lane. And this makes a key connection between the Jackson Drain and Bud Porter. So that's exciting. We've been working on easements and things since before I got here. So that felt really good. The 10-mile trailhead project, 10-mile road is now out to bid. In fact, today they had formal bid openings at ACHD. I was invited, but also advised that the summary of the bids would be more interesting here in a couple of days. So I'll share that information when I have it. We're proceeding with our trail hub design and aiming to wrap that up by this fall, kind of for efficiency's sake, and then we'll probably have to revisit it again because we will wait for the roadway widening to mostly complete before we can do our work, of course. But that's moving along. Fairview Avenue, there was a stretch between the pathway at 5 Mile Creek, we're calling the H2, and it, let's see, on the south side of Fairview to Lakes Place. Not this past pathway tour, but the one before. We did right along that stretch of Fairview where it's designated as a connection, but it's a little scary. So we have a budget enhancement to improve that. The topo survey is now complete, and we have a goal with our consultant to get to about a 35% design phase this fall so that we can know that it's a go with ACHD and start to get some reasonable cost estimates and move forward with that one. So a few more things going on, but those are the things that come to mind initially, unless there are other questions, which I'd entertain.
No, but thank you. We really do appreciate your updates. It's always good to hear.
Yeah, no, I
Like
think
we're
it's
in tune
probably,
with it.
sometimes I don't say anything during these meetings, and I'm happy to participate a bit more and, yeah, just give you kind of the highlights of what's going on. So I'll plan on it.
Great.
Thanks.
Madam President, hey Cam, congrats. That is so exciting about the Bud Porter connection.
Oh.
That is a long time coming.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Yeah, it's been and then we got so close, and then ACHD kind of changed the requirement or reinterpreted the requirement, and it was a bit of a disheartening moment where I thought we can't shut this whole project down after all this time and all these easements over two different interpretations. So they were really great. We talked it through and ended up coming to a solution that seemed to meet all requirements, so that feels good. It's not, in some ways, a very exciting project for widening a sidewalk. It seems like the simplest thing in the world, but it has not been. So I guess a good project for me to, work through the particulars. But thank you, I appreciate it. I'm excited. Yeah, thanks.
All right, and anyone else? Anything else from anyone?
Madam President,
Yes, Commissioner Steele?
I can make a motion. We adjourn tonight's meeting.
Seconded.
Hey, can I get a vote? Who all's in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hey, motion granted. Thank you all. This adjourns our